We are only 28 days into Donald Trump's second term, and among the many controversial moves he has already made, maybe the most controversial is taking a bulldozer to USAID, cutting hundreds of positions at programs responsible for making the world a better place. We caught up with one former employee to get his side of things.
People are really scared right now. My job at USAID is spreading LGBTQIA plus causes in countries that otherwise wouldn't be receptive to them. And without USAID, this work could not be done.
Under Walker, millions of dollars was distributed to many different causes, such as $7.9 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid binary gendered language, $5.5 million for LGBT activism in Uganda, $1.5 million to promote LGBT advocacy in Jamaica, and many similar programs.
The work that we're doing to advance LGBTQIA plus issues is very important. For example, we spent $1.5 million to promote LGBT activism in Jamaica. Now, many people know Jamaicans are some of the most homophobic people on earth. So what we did is we took that $1.5 million and split it 10 ways among 10 different
We are
Jamaican
only 28
men,
days
all for the
into
hope
Donald
that
Trump's
they will
second.
no longer be homophobic.
And how did that work out for you?
They said they'd think about it. I mean, it's probably a no, but that's a tough nut to crack. But here's the thing, homophobia is ingrained in so many cultures all over the world, which is why we need these endless sums of money to promote this stuff.
What is your response to people that say U.S. taxpayers shouldn't be funding stuff like this?
Unless you try, you can't be successful. Nobody really wants to talk about any of USAID's wins. Take, for example, a program we had in the 90s to advance LGBTQIA plus issues in the country of Canada. Now, it's currently shut down because it's no longer necessary, but everybody knows Canada is maybe the gayest country on earth. I mean, can you think of a gayer country?
Facts.
Exactly. And we can do that to countries all over the world. We just need the resources.
The future of USAID remains murky, meaning U.S. taxpayers will no longer be able to make countries all over the world gay against their will. That means no drag stories for children in Afghanistan, or drag queens at all for that matter. And the bureaucrats now out of work will have difficulty finding private sector jobs making countries gay, as those are few and far between. What would you tell Elon Musk and Donald Trump if they're watching right now?
Making the planet gay is vital to American interests, and it is in the best interest of every American that we gay up the entire planet. And the people at USAID have proudly served their country, no homo, and more importantly, they don't have any other skills to feed their families if this goes away.
There you go, Danny. Danny dropping it on you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Fire Program. I am your host, Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Lawgic. Sorry for missing out on y'all last night. I had a family wedding. One of my awesome nephews got married to what I assume is an awesome young woman. I don't really know her very much at all. I'm not sure if I said 2 words to her ever, but that they don't need my blessing. But everyone seemed happy. It was thank God. Happy occasions are always a good thing. But I apologize those of you who were looking for me last night. I did give a warning day before saying, hey, it's probably not gonna be a show, and there wasn't. There wasn't at the end of the day. I had my own mini calamity, which was that I brought my vape with me. And I was like, yeah, I should probably bring a backup just in case this one runs out. And it ran out like on the way in. And I opened up my fresh one and it was defective, which meant I had like 5 hours with no nicotine. I was kind of feisty. Like 3 hours in, I wasn't really holding my tongue back about what I thought about people. I was kind of like everyone's drunk uncle. No one really liked you anyway. It wasn't like that, but I was kind of feisty. And I went over to like the 2 family members who I thought were most likely to actually have vapes, and neither of them had. So yeah, wasn't good. Anyhow, But that was my own little quandary, and I guess the quandary of those who happened to be in shouting distance of me when I was like, "Give me my vapes!" But yeah, it was all in all a fun night. Thank God, everything went off without a hitch, and I guess that's just the tone of this country now. Things go off without a hitch, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. I have a very, very, very busy show tonight. We have a lot of ground to cover. There was tons of developments with Doge. Doge, you know, that whole Department of Government Efficiency agency headed by one and only Elon Musk, richest man in the world, trying to help save us all, save America, and save money, maybe get under budget, you know, actually stop the bleeding. Stop the bleeding. So there was a lot of developments there, bunch of them. So I just thought I should really recap with you guys what's been happening with Doge. Also, want to talk with you about the brewing brouhaha between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky, the hero of the left. Is he a dictator the way Donald Trump will see claims, or is he not? And yeah, where do you stand on that? So we're definitely going to be breaking down that fight and the impact it's had on the left and how they're losing their bloody minds. I also want to share with you, in fact, I'm probably going to start with this. Should I start with this? It's going to take like a half hour. An interview Stephen Miller had where he was just shredding. I mean, shredding this CNN interviewer. Shredding Stephen Miller, obviously one of Trump's top advisors, who went on CNN and just decimated this poor woman. It was you were looking for mercy. That's why I said I have so much to cover tonight, and I didn't even get to the whole congestion pricing thing, which an hour and a half ago I told Lady Lawgic that's going to be the meat and potatoes of my show. It's going to be the congestion pricing, but then I just no. I was like, I gotta put that on the back burner. That's a New York thing. I'm from New York at heart, you know, even though I live in Jersey, I grew up in New York. From New York at heart. It's a big thing. It's a big thing. I'm going to look at the battle that's ensuing then. I also want to try and spend a little time talking about the legality behind Trump having the power and authority to actually prevent New York from having congestion pricing in its own jurisdiction, which seems perplexing when we look at it as a federalist, as far as why does the federal government have a power to say who can do what? And we'll look at what his basis is for claiming that he has authority. And I have some questions on it. As much as I'm a fan of the notion of eradicating congestion pricing, I do have questions about the legal underpinnings that enable Trump to yank congestion pricing. But now it looks like it's going to be forestalled unless Kathy Hochul says, F you, we're just going to keep doing it. Come and stop us. Which, if I was her, if I was on her side of the aisle, that's what I would be saying. I'd be like, all right, you want me to stop it? You should show me how. So there you go. Anyway, good evening, Tammy. Not a cult dues. Exactly. Thank you very much, Fletcher Boy, for staying current with us. We appreciate that. I did not destroy the chuppah. No, this was not. I did feel very old at a certain point. I felt very ancient. So, yeah. Anyhow, where was we? Yeah, let's get on into it. Should we start with Stephen Miller? I'm thinking about starting with Stephen Miller. Let's start with Doge. Oh, also, I have two more things I should tell you about tonight's show. I do have a new sponsor. Thank you, God. New sponsor. I'm going to share with you all somewhere during the course of the show tonight. New sponsor. And one more thing. Yeah. Oh yeah. We have a goal up there. A goal up there for those of you who are in YouTube, which I know is most of you, but certainly a slimmer majority than you might think. That for all YouTube, that if I get 15 yellow or higher super chats during the next 2 hours, I'm going to be going for 3 hours tonight. If not, I'll probably end up cutting it a little shorter. So, Yes, I'm going to go a minimum of 3 hours if I manage to hit that during the first 2 hours. So if that's worth it to you, that to help contribute to the show, that would be awesome. New York, take Trump to SCOTUS. He never wins. He has done pretty well in SCOTUS. He has far from a perfect record, but between immunity, the 14th Amendment stuff, he's had his wins there. He's definitely had his wins there. All right, let's start with Doge because there's a lot to talk about there. Well, before we get to Doge, there's one little happy topic I want to share with you all. You remember that guy Kash Patel? Yeah, Kash Patel. Since we're talking about Doge, they're about money. Cash. No, all right, forget that. That's a bad segue. But Kash Patel is scheduled to be confirmed to be the new director of the FBI as soon as, worst drumroll ever, tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow. We might have Kash Patel in there. Tomorrow. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen says, here's the Kash plan. At 11 a.m. on Thursday, February 20th, the Senate will vote on the motion to invoke cloture. Cloture means closing debate. So we give a limited window of time for there to be further debate before we finally come to a vote on Kash Patel for FBI. Then shortened debate for director level. You didn't know this, did you? Yeah, shortened debate doesn't require 30 hours. At 1:45 p.m. Eastern, we will proceed to a final vote to confirm Kash Patel. And everyone's saying he's got the numbers. Oh, my God. This is the one confirmation that I have been really, really, really itching for. I'm really itching to see Kash in there as director of the FBI. This is so critical. To me, this is the biggest one. The biggest one. So out of all the confirmations we've been hoping for, this is the biggest one. So, 3-hour tour fun. There you go. And Aaron also jumping in on the going 3 hours. There you go. I think we'll get there. I think we're going to get there. Thank you both for trying to push us to 3 hours. Let's get on in. Should we talk about this is where I want to start with on Doge. And we're going to start with a little bit of law here, which this is pretty exciting. Margot Cleveland, if you're not following her, you should be. She's great. So she does legal analysis on X, and she's a very intelligent attorney, professor, apparently. So, Professor, what is her resume? What does she have on her bio here? Senior legal correspondent at the Federalist of Counsel to NCLA Legal, 25 years, 7th Circuit law clerk, former full-time university faculty, Catholic conservative, wife to DH, mom to DS. Well, there you go. And she's phenomenal. Big fan. You have to be a big fan of Margot Cleveland. And she talks about the toothless TROs. Everyone's so bothered about how whatever's happening with Doge gets hit with a TRO. And here she is tooting her horn about how she's saying, don't worry so much. Don't worry about those TROs. As I wrote earlier this week, she wrote, whether the court will do so remains to be seen. However, there's also a third option beyond granting or denying the requested TRO, and one that seems probable given what we've seen other district courts doing in response to challenges to the Trump administration's actions. Enter a toothless TRO. We saw that last week when 2 different district courts entered TROs that restrain the Trump administration from freezing, canceling grants, except, and this is the key part, as allowed by statute, regulation, or the terms of the grants. And they sort of have to do this because they can't force him to keep all of his stuff. You sort of left, if you're a judge, you can't force him to keep all of his stuff. As I detailed at the time, the exception provided in the TRO swallowed the rule. Because, why? Federal contracts and grants uniformly provide the government may cancel the funding. It's in the contract. They still have to cancel it. So under the terms of the contract, he's allowed to cancel it. Thus, while the headlines from last week create the appearance that the courts were barring the Trump administration from cutting funding, and perhaps judges like, Judge McConnell there thought he really was barring it as much as he could, in reality, the terms of TROs have little impact on the functioning of the executive branch. Look at that. They're still slashing. I don't care what you say. I gave the full article over there. We're not going to go through that. And that's what she suggested, that I don't think this is really going to end up doing anything. And sure enough, seems like it's not really doing very much. Well, here we have plaintiffs in case against USAID filing an emergency motion to enforce TRO, complaining that the government status reports claim the government is complying with the TRO. Why? Well, let's read. This court also determined that on the record before it at the time, quote, it would be overbroad to enjoin defendants from taking action to enforce the terms of particular contracts. So you can't say this contract you have to uphold. Where are they coming from? The court can't do that, including with respect to expirations, modifications, or terminations pursuant to contractual provisions. If the contract itself says they can cancel it, well, then the Trump administration has license and jurisdiction to actually cancel them. Focusing on that sentence, defendants suggest that they are in compliance with the court's order because they have, in the last 5 days, conducted an internal review of the thousands of grants, contracts, and cooperative agreements issued by the State Department and USAID, and determined that the en masse suspensions, stop work orders, and terminations were consistent with the terms of every grant, contract, and cooperative agreement. Oh my God, what happened to our constitutional crisis? We need a constitutional crisis. It's a constitutional crisis. Why? They're complying with the contract. What does that mean? There's no constitutional crisis. He has the right to cancel it. And guess what? He did. That's what happened. It's not like he's like breaking contracts and breaking the law, but we heard there's a constitutional crisis. Weren't there all these different Democrat congressmen who were standing up there screaming, this is a constitutional crisis? Bunch of Democrats together with Chuck Schumer. There's no constitutional crisis. This assertion strains credulity. It's also contradicted by accounts from within the government, which show that the defense actions have continually lack a reasoned basis. That's the claim. That's the claim that they're making. They're complaining. They're like, wait. How could it be that they're allowed to cancel? This doesn't make any sense. But the point that Margot is making here is that the government's doing exactly what she thought they were allowed to do. Here's plaintiff's motion to enforce. We're not going to go through the whole motion. No. 17 pages is too much for us right now. But note, plaintiffs actually cite women's death which was actually caused by a greedy NGO who covered extras caused by USAID funding. Of course, X-readers know truth via oilfield rando. And here they are citing it. Each day, their irreparable harm increases. Did the suffering of millions of people across the world who depend on the work performed by these grants? Deaths have already been directly attributed to defendants' actions. What's the death in the footnote? Sarah Nua, USAID freeze, claims first victims as oxygen supplies cut off. Yeah, so that situation here with this purported death caused by the defunding of USAID is ridiculous because actually she was being supported by an NGO. That NGO has hundreds of millions, $1.4 billion in grants that they've gotten. They have money in their coffers. So how did cutting off funding 2 days ago cause this woman to die? How did that happen? The particular NGO, which, in case you're not familiar with what that acronym means non-government organization. When you see NGO, non-government organization. The reason they have to call it a non-government organization is because it's so ginormous you would think it's probably a government entity, but it's not. So when you see NGO, just think to yourself, massive organization that likes to pretend that they are a wing of the government, even though they're not. This particular NGO is called IRC, the one that Oilfield Rando was breaking down. When he was talking about this laughably corrupt NGO that suddenly didn't have the money for old Thailand Mimo's oxygen because the mean orange man cut USAID funding. And he breaks down in this great article, which I don't want to spend a lot of time going through with you, just how many hundreds of millions of funding they have, which back in 2018, it was only 783 million. That almost doubled by 2021, including 728 million in government grants. This IRC is the International Rescue Committee. That's the NGO, the International Rescue Committee. As you can see here, I don't know if it's big enough, you can see it. Make it a little bigger for you. So IRC claiming that they don't have money, and he goes through all of the grants that they've gotten, the millions, nay, billions of dollars they've gotten in grants, and that's only up till 2021. I guarantee you it only went up after that because Biden was giving out a lot of money since 2021. A lot of money. So if it was 1.4 billion in 2021, yeah, you can bet your bottom dollar it was probably closer to 2, if not well over 2 by 2024. So, and our funding of it was, but no, meanwhile, they didn't have money. They didn't have, where's the money? We don't have money. We don't have money. Shut off our money. How are we going to, we have to let old people die because they shut off our money. Unbelievable. He's just going grant by grant here. All the different grants that they got. Anyhow, back to Margot here. Government declaration now also explains why Trump administration took the approach it did with freeze and then reinstate. USAID records are so horrible, it's impossible to know where money is going. As they wrote, historically, USAID had limited insufficient payments control or review mechanisms. Certifying officers pushed out payments, or grantees directly drew down on letters or credit or other facilities, and the system automatically processed those payments without sufficient opportunity for payments integrity or program review. And that these system deficiencies and the inability to provide complete information led to serious questions about waste, fraud, abuse, and even illegal payments. What the hell are we supposed to do? So, also continuing with, to correct these deficiencies, USAID in the process of adopting a comprehensive review process for assuring payment integrity, meaning make sure that we're not sending money to the wrong people or more money than they should get, and determine that payments under existing contracts and grants are not subject to fraud or other basis termination. Payments will be released as they're processed through this process, which will require a clear link between ongoing payments and specific USAID programs or appropriate accounts. Any entities that are dissatisfied with individualized payment determinations have recourse both within USAID and the courts. So if you have someone who thinks you're entitled to the money, so take them to court, get the money. In accord with the executive branch's robust statutory and constitutional authority over the provision of foreign aid, USAID has broad authority on the specific instruments themselves and the existing statutes and regulations to suspend and terminate foreign assistance funding obligations. So they're acting in accordance with the law and with the TRO. And now my I told you so dance, and you should do it. I told you so dance. For example, this is them explaining how they were still in compliance with the TRO while relying on that exception that Margot predicted they would rely on. Substantially all of USAID's foreign assistance grants and cooperative agreements authorize the agency to suspend or terminate the award in whole or in part if the agency determines that continuation of all or part of the funding for a program would not be in the national interest of the United States or would be a violation of applicable law. So that's what these contracts say. Substantially all USAID contracts are terminable by the agency for convenience, pursuant to the Federal Acquisition Regulation and USAID regulations. So, yeah. Sorry, no more money for you. And she cites over here the footnote, which also says other authorities may apply to non-foreign assistance grants. For example, government grants generally may be terminated by the federal agency or passed through entity pursuant to the terms and conditions of the federal award, including to the extent authorized by law. If an award no longer effectuates the program goals or agency priorities, meaning we don't like this anymore, we have a right to terminate it. Trump administration then explains that it paused or suspended consistent with the terms and rights of the specific awards or contracts. I need to sneeze. I do. I'm sort of fighting it here. Can you tell? I don't think you can tell. I was hiding it very well, but I do feel like this urge to sneeze. It might come out as like a massive kablooey in the middle of a sentence in the next 3 minutes. Just warning you. Maybe you should pay closer attention for that. Trump administration. Trump administration explains that a pause is suspended consistent with terms and rights of specific awards or contracts in USAID and State Department, not Moscow Doge. Then reviewed and decided to terminate. And the stop work orders, yep, those were entered consistent with specific contracts and grant terms. So, yeah, all these TROs made for really nice headlines of like, we're stopping Trump, and yet no, and yet he got what he wanted because he's Donald Trump. There you go. Here's more authority under which Trump terminated the contracts. So the declaration stresses we've only done what you allowed us to do, and if it's money owed, plaintiff can come and tell us. You can come tell us, try and work it through the system, go to court. Now plaintiffs, folks supposedly cut off from USAID, are furious. They demand Trump administration be held in contempt because TRO was unambiguous and said, you can't freeze withhold spending. They're so mad. But as been screamed for last week, what TRO really said was, you can't freeze or cut USAID funding unless you can. In which case, go ahead and do it. And this also points out the issue with TRO in the first place. Plaintiffs never showed imminent harm to them because they never showed Trump couldn't cut funding. This sentence here, I disagree with. They really show a lack of likelihood of success. That's really what it is. There might be imminent harm. They might really need the money. But I don't think they got a likelihood of success because he has carte blanche to shut all them down. Plaintiffs need to show some harm to them and can't. Judge might be inclined to rule against Trump. A Rhode Island judge tried that move and soon after walked back his order conceding, yes, if you can cancel grants, you can, well, cancel a grant. And now she has her little I told you so. There you go. Very pleased with herself, as she should be. Moving on. This isn't what we wanted. This is not really, the next thing is not really a Doge thing, but along the same lines, this is something you should be aware of as far as saving money. And I'm lumping together all the Doge money saving stuff. Stacey Abrams, Power Forward Communities, received $2 billion. B with the B. You know how much $2 billion is? Well, if you took a bunch of $100 bills and you stacked them one on top of the other, when you get to about 3.5 feet, you're at $1 million. Like 3.5 feet. Like you could probably, like if you're tall enough, you could probably just like step right over that pile of $1 million. Yeah. Yeah. If you wanted to get to $1 billion and you kept stacking it up, that pile would be 3,500 feet. Yeah. 3,500 feet. You know, kind of like, I don't know, like the highest waterfall in the world. Yeah. Kind of like, you know, kind of like really, really high. Kind of like where planes are. Well, they probably go higher than that. They probably go much higher than that. But yeah. Yeah. Really high. 3,000 feet. Yeah. Taller than any man-made structure. There you go. I assume, right? It's got to be taller. 3,000 feet. I assume. I'm going to guess it is. Wait, is that right? That can't be right. What is the tallest structure? Now I'm curious. I'm curious. I think I have to walk that back. How tall is tallest? We got man-made structure. Oh, it is. There you go. 800 feet taller than the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Yeah. Yeah, here's your little. The Burj Khalifa. Yeah, it's like 800 feet taller than that. That's what $1 billion is, as opposed to 3 feet, 3.5 feet. Whew. All right. Well, that's that. So that's, she got 2 of those, $2 billion. In 2023, they had $100 in revenue, and now they're getting $1 billion, $2 billion from Stacey Abrams. That's part of the $20 billion that they tried burning. Lee Zeldin trying to claw that money back Give us back our friggin' money. Give us back our money. So, because fraudulent, corrupt Joe Biden. This is why I just tweeted out like moments before the show started. If you want to find out where the fraud and abuse is, if that's what Doge and Elon want to do, just look to whoever got the most money from Biden. Make a list of the top 500 entities that got the most money from Biden. And right there, start at the top of the list and work your way down. Work your way down, and you're going to see fraud every step of the way. Every step of the way. Guaranteed. Fraud and waste. Every step of the way. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Meanwhile, Doge says schools have spent nearly $200 billion of COVID relief funds with little oversight impact on students. For example, $393,000 to rent out a Major League Baseball stadium. Wow. Wow. $86,000 in Caesar Palace hotel rooms, $60,000 in swimming pool passes, not building swimming pools, swimming pool passes, and even an ice cream truck. All this money was drawn with zero documentation. There's $4 billion out of that $200 billion left. And the new USAID gov is setting a simple new rule. All grantees must provide receipts for every purchase before funding is released. Nice. Nice. That's what Doge is overseeing here. $200 billion of COVID relief funds. $200 billion. Scott Bessent, our Secretary of Treasury, is on top of this. He know what up. These politicians are very nervous to they pull their punches. This is your classic politician. I like how he frames this. And he's on our side, this guy.
When I came in, we all think there's waste, there's abuse. I think there may be some real fraud here, Brett.
You think there may be some fraud? You think there may be some fraud? All right. Like I said, he doesn't want to say it directly, but he thinks there may be some fraud. Narino says, 3-hour fun. I couldn't fall asleep last night. I'm sorry you couldn't fall asleep. I'm sorry. I could have turned a camera on myself of me screaming at little kids. Get out of my way! Actually, my grandsons were there because this was family weddings. My grandsons were there, and I got to play with I got to play with them for like a good 15-20 minutes. So that was awesome. 2-year-old's adorable. They all are actually kind of. Must go 3 hours. We miss you. Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Fem Natal. I appreciate that. 3 hours. It's looking good. It's looking good. The money's coming in. USAID gave $24 million to BLM. Yep. To Patricia McCullough's house. That's what they gave it to. IRS next. You are 100% guilty until you spend a fortune on attorneys and accountants to prove you're not. Yeah, it is messed up. It's very messed up. Following the slime trail, indeed, Brian. Do it. I got more Doge stuff for you. You're gonna like this. I got 3 more parts to my Doge coverage tonight. 3 more parts. Let me take a quick look over here, make sure I didn't miss anything. Spuds 1964 says, to paraphrase former Chrysler pitchman, baseball player, game show host Joe Garogio, buy an NGO, get a check. Denise says, CPAC kicked out J6er Jake Lang and barred 18 to 22 other J6ers tonight. Really? Why? What happened? I want to know more about that story. What happened there? I got a feel-good story for y'all. I'll buy that for $1. All right, there you go. All right. Almost fired for working with Doge. Social Security fraud expert now leads the agency. What? This is a nice feel-good story for you. You're going to like this one. Brought to you by Daily Wire. We'll cover this quickly. Leland Dudek was an obscure bureaucrat at the Social Security Administration office who dedicated his career to stopping fraud. But when he worked with DOGE to do just that, he came close to being fired. At 4:30 p.m., my boss called to tell me I've been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, Dudek wrote on LinkedIn. They want to fire me for cooperating with DOGE. Then a stunning reversal occurred. It was acting Social Security Commissioner Michelle King who was out of a job, and Dudek was reinstated with a big promotion, taking her job leading the massive agency on an interim basis. Yes! You want to know who your friends are? See who your enemies hate. The Washington Post reported that King exited the agency after refusing to let DOGE access agency data and was replaced by Dudek. Oh my gosh. Talk about Yanahapaku here. But it has not been reported that managers of the agency had moved to punish Dudek as he cooperated with the efficiency czars. The LinkedIn Post said, I confess, I helped DOGE understand SSA. I mailed myself publicly accessible documents, meaning not secret documents, not confidential, and explained them to DOGE. I confess, I moved contractor money around to add data science resources to my anti-fraud team. I confess, I asked where the fat was and is in our contract so we can make the right tough choices. I confess. I bullied agency executives, shared executive contract information, circumvented the chain of command to connect DOGE with the people who get stuff done, it continued. Everything I've ever done is in service to our country, our beneficiaries, and our agency itself. The Social Security Administration, the White House did not return requests for comment. The SSA employee speaking in addition anonymity told the Daily Wire that the person who put Dudek on leave was Gina Clemens, Deputy Commissioner for Analytics Review and Oversight, and that she's still on the job. Let's go get Gina. Get her. Get the pitchforks. Get the torches. I mean that 100% figuratively. No one should cause any physical harm to Gina or anyone else. Dudek, a career civil servant, is an example of how there are few fiscally conscious long-time government employees and how the Trump administration DOGE can maximize their impact by joining forces with people who know where the bodies are buried. After publication of the story, a spokesman for Senator Mike Lee, Billy Gribben, said of it on X, I hope we see more of this. We need the good bureaucrats to come out of the woodwork. This is your time to shine. If you're working for some massive agency, maybe you work for the military, maybe you've worked in the past for HHS, Department of Ed, come forward. You will be greatly rewarded. Riches will be yours. Fame, glory will be to you. Come forward. Not Jan. Thy brave, noble bureaucrats who have a conscience. Show us where the bodies are buried. There are many good civil servants who have been quietly frustrated for years with politically motivated mismanagement who possess an encyclopedic knowledge of the problems of the agencies, put them in charge, hand them scalpels and flamethrowers. SS Commissioner was traditionally appointed to 6-year terms would continue between presidential administrations. But Biden destroyed that precedent when he fired the person who Trump appointed in his first term. His Social Security Commissioner, Martin O'Malley, seemed to view agency employees, perhaps even more than taxpayers and beneficiaries, as his constituency. He signed a last-minute deal with the employee union in November 2024, granting them telework. You don't have to come to the office. Stay home. I guarantee you, the next 5 years, you can go sit and work from home. And then he resigned days later to run for chair of the DNC. What a douchebag, loser, jackass, Martin O'Malley. I'm gonna basically twist the government's arm into signing this stupid contract, and then I'm gonna bolt. See, that's bad faith. Frankly, I think it's criminal. Because you're clearly acting against the interests of the people, and it's insanity. Using our money to basically pay off people. I think it's criminal. Now Dudek will serve in that role until Trump nominee Frank Bizignano is confirmed by the Senate. The Social Security Administration is a prime opportunity to use data to find government waste and fraud from illegal immigrants using other people's Social Security numbers to people pretending to be disabled to get benefits. To get benefits. Yeah. And we saw that the other day when I was here. 20 million people on Social Security are listed as being over 100 years old. Which, if that number sounds hard to you, it should, because currently alive in the United States is roughly 101,000. Now, someone claimed to me, well, the reason that would be is because the default setting, if someone doesn't put in their date of birth, would be 1785. But if that was what it is, that's 150 years ago. And the chart that Elon shared with us, which showed how many people there were between 100 and 109, how many people between 110 and 119, how many between 120 and 129, millions in each category. They would all be in the same, lumped together in the same category. All those millions. So no, that's not what the answer is. That's not what the answer is. So there you go. Two more great things. Number one, check this out. This is something that Trump is teasing that he might do with the Doge savings. That may end up, a piece of it may end up in your pocket. Those Doge savings may end up in your pocket.
And saving taxpayers billions and billions of dollars every single day. And there's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions. And we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt, which is, if you look at value, if it were a real estate balance sheet, the debt is tiny, but we still want to pay it down. Doesn't matter. We don't look at it as a piece of real estate. It's America. We're going to get it down through intelligence, hard work, and, as Elon said, a word called caring. You have to care. By doing this, Americans will tell us where there's waste. They'll be reporting it themselves. They participate in the process of saving money. So many of the men and women in this room, as an example, they pay tremendous amounts of taxes. And here are just a few examples of where your money was going before I came along. These are just some of the, just taken at random. Oh, there are much worse examples than this. I was just looking at them before the speech, and I can tell you they were much worse. And there are some that are horrible, but I don't want to really say them because they're very, very embarrassing to people. Very, very embarrassing.
Yeah. So you might be getting money. Well, if you're getting money, if you like getting money, hit the like and subscribe. You can also drop a comment down below. Those are all great things to do. Great things to do. Like and subscribe. And Joey here is correct. Promises made, promises kept. If Social Security Administration data is right, it should be fixed. If it's wrong, it should be fixed. This is not a hard question. Just be friggin' right. And in case you're worried that Doge is not really going to end up fixing anything, Congress is paying close attention to Doge. Close attention to Doge. Rand Paul wants Doge to build a $500 billion rescission package for Congress to approve. So that all those people screaming, Congress promised this money, that when we March 14th is when that day dies. We need a new continuing resolution as of March 15th. There's no funding appropriated for March 15th. And he's looking to fix $500 billion, hoping to do that, I believe, by his next continuing resolution, which will have to be sometime in the next 3 weeks. Senator Rand Paul is no newcomer to pointing out silly ways that the federal government wastes taxpayer dollars, like the time the National Institute of Health spent over $300,000 to study whether quails got more frisky after being fed cocaine, which has been a staple of his speeches for years. So he's pretty thrilled to see the executive branch focused on cutting wasteful spending. Quote, we've been pointing this out for a decade. But now we finally have an administration that's interested in it. They're canceling contracts, locking doors, firing people. There really is this disrupting force, and that's good, Paul told Reason in an interview on Wednesday. Nearly a month after President Donald Trump returned to office and unleashed Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency on the administrative state, Paul said, Doge is doing a great job, and he's looking forward to making some of those changes permanent. Doing that will require a few additional steps. If we want to have real savings, they're going to have to send this back to Congress, and Congress is going to have to approve on spending less money. During a weekly meeting of Republican senators early on Wednesday, Paul encouraged Vice President J.D. Vance to have Trump administration draw up a rescission package, a special type of bill that formally withdraws spending Congress had previously authorized. That would allow Congress to make the Doge spending cuts stick. There you go. Even better, rescission bill can pass the Senate with a simple majority, and Paul believes there'd be enough support, even though a similar maneuver failed during the first Trump administration. And he's right. Even if it failed in the first administration, now with all the accolades that Doge is getting, these senators know if they turn it down, these Republican senators know if they turn it down, their head's in a chopping block. It's in a chopping block. This is a time which we've never seen before, where Americans are suddenly awakened to the possibility of, wow, we can actually fix our fiscal irresponsibility. And any of these rhinos in the Senate who want to stand in its way are going to struggle to maintain their political lives if they do so, fortunately. I'd love to see a $500 billion rescission package, Paul said. The Republicans right now in the Senate are actually agitating to increase spending. I'd much rather be voting on a bill to reduce spending than increase spending. See, because they're rhinos. They're rhinos. He's not saying Congress, he's saying the Republicans are agitating to increase spending. Why? Why? A vote on a rescission bill would solve some of the legal and procedural questions about Doge's spending cuts. Under the Congressional Budget Control Act, Empowerment Act of 1974, presidents are not allowed to simply refuse to spend money. Russ Vaught, the White House budget director, believes the law is unconstitutional and is seeking to challenge the limits it places on presidential control over spending. That potentially messy fight could be avoided if Congress gives its approval to rescind the spending Doge wants to cut. Meanwhile, Paul shrugged off another criticism of Doge's efforts so far that trimming a few billion doesn't really do much when you have a $7 trillion budget. Why would we not start with the most egregious stuff and get rid of it, said Paul. Ultimately, how do you get to better spending? You get better people in government, or you give them less money. I don't think we can really expect to get better people, less bureaucrats in government. The only way you can get less waste is to give them less money. There you go. So we're looking hopefully at Doge cuts becoming a permanent thing, which God bless that. That'd be amazing. Joe, I'm 306 years old living on Social Security. Trump is destroyed. I'm sorry, Wesley. I'm sorry. Life is rough. You gotta hope so. You gotta hope so. The Democrats are really. This is what I just want to. We're 30 days into this administration. Literally today is 30 days. Day 30. I'm just going to point this out to you. In American history, at least for the last, century, nobody votes in an even number year based on things that happen in an odd number year. They just don't. They never vote in an even number year based on things that happen in an odd number year. So whatever stupidity the Democrats are doing now, while it's hurting their polling numbers now, polling numbers don't matter because we don't have elections for another 19 months, 20 months. So you would hope, but stuff that they do in 2025 is not going to have much, if any, impact on what the voters are going to do in 2026. So it's really too early to even start considering that sort of thing. You would hope that if their idiocy continues into 2026, that it could help us. but who knows? I wish I had Elon saying that I want to go to Mars, but not on impact. What? Huh? Brian, I don't know what you're talking. Money to U.S. will cause inflation. Borrowed money, paid debt. Yeah, borrow money, paid debt. Oh my God, we're like some housewife, some like suburban housewife whose husband is out of work. We're just gonna like borrow from one credit card to pay another one. Pathetic. So that's your Doge report for February 19, 2025. That's your Doge report. And speaking of paying the bills, I should probably give you today's. No, that didn't work. Today's sponsor is East Hills. East Hills. For all your back-to-school needs, please make sure you check out East Hills, the mall, for all your back-to-school shopping important stuff. Please check out East Hills.
East Hills, we're back to school. Denim, haircut, backpacks, come get your backpack.
Boots and pants and boots and pants.
New shoes, get yourself an outfit. Denim,
Boots and pants and boots and pants.
haircut, new shoes. So get yourself back to school with East Hills.
There you go. There you go. So for all your back to school needs, make sure you get yourself over to East Hills. You can get denim. You can get haircuts, new shoes. For all your back to school needs, whether they're shoes, whether it's haircuts, whether it's denim. Please make sure you get yourself over to East Hills, and thank you for sponsoring tonight's show. Yeah, there you go. What? Everyone needs to survive. Everyone needs to survive. Everyone's got bills to pay. Everyone's got bills to pay. All right. Phew. We've been worried about you. We've been worried about you. I'm glad you're caught up, Mama. Mama. Ooh. All right. We're halfway there, by the way, in case you're wondering on our goal. 8 out of 15. Halfway to our goal of 3 hours. All right. No, in time, I'm like not even a third of the way there, but halfway there on meeting our yellow goal. Let's talk a little bit about Russia. Time to talk about Russia. Are you here with me? Can we talk about Russia? Let's talk some about some Russia. We got some Russian conversation to have. Oh, Nelly. Let's talk about Russia. We're going to start off by sharing a little clip here of Russian President Vladimir Putin. You know, Darth Vader or whatever it is that the left wants to call him. Here he is. And again, never mistake me as someone who thinks that Putin is a good guy. I don't think he's a good guy. I don't. I just don't know that he's the evil force of nature that everyone makes him out to be. But let's see what we got here. Turn off our closed caption because that's not going to work. We've agreed to resume the work of diplomatic agents in a normal way.
нормальном режиме работы дипломатических ведомств. Постоянные
The constant expulsion of diplomats from Washington and Moscow does not lead to anything good.
У нас, если
If
так
things go on like
дальше
this,
пойдет,
only cleaners will work in these buildings.
в
I
этих
don't know
зданиях
what
будут работать только одни
I
уборщицы,
guess so.
чей труд
Of
тоже
course, we must
должен
appreciate their work,
оценить,
but this is not what diplomatic
но ради
agencies
чего
are
создаются
created
дипломатические,
for.
Представительства. Это первое. Договорились возобновить в
But we've agreed to resume the work of diplomatic agencies in a normal way. That's the key part here. That's him saying supposedly. He talked about how Trump weaves. He weaves a lot. It's very, very hard to understand sometimes where he's going and where he's coming from. But so that was his statement there. Trump today committed the cardinal sin. There are certain names over the last few years who have attained legacy status in the eyes of the left. Legacy status in the eyes of the left. I would argue that the two biggest names, the two most legendary status names of the left over the last 5 years, I don't think there's really even much debate here. You can ask who's number one, who's number two, but it's certainly Vladimir Zelensky and Dr. Anthony Fauci. These two people are saints in the eyes of the left. They're heroes in our times. They're messianic type figures. I see what you did there. I see what you did. So they're heroes in our time. Vladimir Zelensky. So, what do we got here? One more thing I missed. Joe, the congestion tax is good. Kathy Hochul said so. We're gonna get. I'm gonna get there. Then we're working our way there. I'm working my way there. Working. I'm gonna get there. Don't worry. Don't worry. Right now we're in Russia. We're in Russia now. In Ukraine. Ukraine. Oh, it's good. It's good. It's good to work deal. Donald Trump put out a post today that attacked sacred cow Vladimir Zelensky in ways that rocked the world and had the left up in arms. You're a Putin lover. The mask has come off. We always knew you loved Putin. And now you're attacking sacred cow Vladimir Zelensky. You're attacking the sacred cow. He wrote, think of it. A modestly successful comedian, Vladimir Zelensky, talked to the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion, more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed, meaning they're going to get their money back, while the United States will get nothing back. Nothing back. Why didn't Sleepy Joe demand equalization? Is in that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us. So Europe's getting their money back. They have claims on Ukraine. We're not getting any of that money back. We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation. He loves talking. We have a big, beautiful ocean. It's the biggest ocean. It's really not, actually, but a big, beautiful ocean separation. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections. This is what freaked everyone out. You call him... You call him a dictator. Oh my God. He's a sacred cow. The sacred cow. Blasphemer. Blasphemer. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we're all successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something I'll admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. I guess you can qualify this as a mean tweet. I guess I said he hasn't been doing much of the mean tweets lately. I think you can call this a little bit of a mean tweet. But I never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep that gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered and millions have unnecessarily died. And so it continues. That's what he tweeted out at 10:47 this morning. Wow. 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 Tell us how you really feel. Now, he asked me my opinion on why he did this. You want to know my opinion on why he did this? I think that he thinks that Zelensky is the biggest obstacle to a peace deal right now, and he's trying to pound that into submission. That's what I think that tweet is about. It's let me pound Zelensky. Get him to submit. I know he's gonna get mad up front, and there'll be all the bluster, and he's angry, and he'll just blah 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 blah. You're terrible. I don't like you. Blah 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 blah. You know. All right. He's gonna. Let me pound him into submission here. Let him know he's not this. I don't think he's a big saint. I'm not going to be bending over backwards for him. We need to get a peace deal done now. And he's the biggest obstacle. That's why I think he's reflecting there. With respect to him with respect to Trump claiming Zelensky is a dictator, DC Drano's he's bringing the heat, bringing the facts as to why it is that Trump would properly refer to him as being a dictator. Want to know why Trump called him a dictator? Here are the facts. He's in the 6th year of a 5-year term. He declared martial law in February 2022 and has banned elections since then. He's banned 11 political parties. Imagine if Trump banned the Democratic Party. Imagine how they would go nuts. And properly so. Passed a law in 2022 to censor journalists and combined all news into one government station. Journalists investigating his corruption get conscripted and thrown in the front lines to die. Even Saddam Hussein held elections. There you go. Even Saddam Hussein held elections. If he's so popular, just hold the elections. What was the name of that reporter? Gonzalez? Was it Gonzalez? Who was basically left to die by Zelensky? He wasn't sufficiently pro-Ukraine in his coverage? Yeah. How's the war going anyway? Like, what's happening in the war? You might be wondering what's happening in the war. Well, here's a little clip from Glenn Greenwald of his debate on Piers Morgan with Captain Dan Crenshaw. I don't know if he's a captain or not. I'm not saying his rank. I was just throwing that out there. What is his rank? What was his rank? What was Dan Crenshaw's rank? Lieutenant commander. After certain 10 years in the SEAL teams. All right. Lieutenant commander. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not going to kid you. What's that? Is that higher than captain? I'm going to embarrass myself by not knowing. I'm going to embarrass myself by not knowing. You guys tell me, is that higher? Is that higher than? That is what I was thinking. That is what I was thinking. Is lieutenant commander higher than a captain? I don't even know what that. I don't even know where that. That's the same as a major. Oh, so it is higher. That's the same as a major. I'm going to trust you on this, Rocky. So that's higher than a captain. All right. Let's hear. That was for you, Brian. Thank you so much for your very generous super chat. 7 times yellow chats equals gold plus 30 bonus. Not sure if that counts for 3 hours. I gotta give that extra accreditation. I recognize that. I have to give that extra accreditation. I gotta give that added. I can't deny. You drop 100 on me like that. I have to stand up and recognize. So thank you, Brian. Thank you. All right. Notice how non-committal I was on that. But I'm definitely gonna give it bonus points. All right, let's hear this debate here between Dan Crenshaw and Glenn Greenwald. This is great.
Every single day.
I just think we should. I just think we
Are we going at regular speed here? Because they sound like they're talking fast. All right, we're good.
should save our fury about whether Ukraine get included or not
But look,
for
look,
when they
factually,
actually get excluded.
Can I just insert?
Yeah.
I just insert a little
Go
bit
ahead.
of realism into the conversation?
Yes.
Because I know Dan started off by saying, "Oh, Russia's this crappy little second-rate power. We have to flatter them and make them think they matter, but they really don't. They're really weak." It's always a pretty weird contradiction to simultaneously say that and then at the same time warn that Russia's going to start invading Western Europe, this crappy little second-rate power.
Boom, boom. He doesn't have to say any more. It's like, how are you sitting there calling a second-rate power, and yet you're worried that they're going to start World War III and just destroy NATO? And Poland's next, and then Germany and France is going to fall in 3 weeks. We all know they're half as strong as they were in 1930 and 1940. We all know that. We all know that. That's where they're going next. That's where they're going next. We've been hearing that for years. Years. We're drawing the line Ukraine so they don't go into NATO. For years, we've been hearing that lie, outright lie. There was never a moment where Putin was thinking about invading NATO because he recognizes the repercussion of that. And I'll tell you this much. I'm just going to pause and go on record. I'm going to go on official record here. This is me going on record telling you, if he had invaded NATO, my position on this would be very, very different. Very, very different. I would be much, much more strongly anti-Russia if he had invaded a NATO country. Because once we make that commitment that we're going to defend someone under NATO, I think we're duty-bound to honor that commitment. But I think that he went into Ukraine because he didn't want them joining NATO. He didn't like what was happening with NATO expanding eastward. And he also certainly wanted to have his pipelines, K2 pipeline, running through Ukraine, and he was having all sorts of difficulties with that. At the end of the day, I think this was a war of money. But when the left wanted to sell this to us, and not just the left, plenty of Republicans on the right, neocons like Eye Patch McCain here, who are very, very excited to tell us how go Ukraine. They were very, very excited about that. Very, very excited. And warning us, dire threats that Poland's next. He's got Poland next. Poland didn't seem afraid of it. But no, they got Poland next. Why? Send money, send money, send money. And then that money's going to come back to D.C. We all saw it. We all saw that cycle, that spin cycle there with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and that whole Michigas. So, yeah. If he had invaded NATO, I would feel very differently about this, but he didn't. And the lie that he was about to invade NATO was complete crap. And Glenn Greenwald really points out very astutely. He's sitting here saying they're just a second-rate country. We can take them. And then the next breath, it's like, oh, my God, they're going to go into NATO. They're going to take over Western Europe. Great point there by Glenn Greenwald out of the gate.
But the reality is, this is the reality, whether you like it or not, Russia has fought a war now for 3 years against unified NATO and the United States, pouring hundreds of billions of dollars and highly sophisticated weapons into Ukraine, and the front line continues to move westward, not eastward, where the Russians are gaining more and more territory. More and more Ukrainians are being killed. There are fewer Ukrainian men left in that country who want to fight. They're being forcibly dragged in there and used as cannon fodder, or they're fleeing and risking their lives to do it. The reality is Russia is winning the war or has won the war. And you can say, oh, you must be a Kremlin agent to say that.
This is just an outright lie. Tell us, Danny boy. Tell us how it's an outright lie. They're not winning the war. We're totally winning. Ukraine's totally winning.
You know, you just got to know nothing about military information or tactics. That's what you have to do to say that. You just have to know nothing.
So the idea that
is clearly what you do.
Yeah, well,
you got so many facts wrong. It's hard to know where to even start.
You can you think Ukraine is winning the war? In which direction is the front line moved, Dan? Has it moved westward or eastward?
It depends on where you're looking at.
Depends on where you're looking at. All right, well, let's look at it let's look at a map right side up as opposed to upside down. And then start assessing, is it moving eastward or westward? You know, I guess if you're looking at it upside down, it's moving westward. Oh my God. Oh my God. Ugh.
And the
It
front
depends
line
on where
is
you're
collapsing.
looking at. I hate to
You have
break it to you,
tens
but it
of
depends on what you're
thousands.
looking
You have
at.
tens
And the
of
ratios
thousands.
of Russian deaths
You
to
have
Ukrainian
tens of
deaths is like
thousands.
4 to 1. You just don't know what you're
You
talking
have
about.
tens of
The ratio is 4 to 1, and that's speculative. I don't know how he knows those numbers.
thousands
never
of
fought
Ukrainian men.
anything.
You have
You don't
no
know
idea
anything
what you're
about the
talking about.
military.
I fought a lot of things. I fought a lot of things.
Oh, you fought a lot
just
of
because you were in the
things? Tell
military
me what
doesn't make you an
things.
expert. I'm sorry to say that
I
Donald
don't need
Trump
to be
is
an
winning the
expert. I just
election
know basic
based
facts, and I have
on-
all the briefings
based
on it. I
on
don't think you do.
rejecting. Clearly Russia is winning the war. The Ukrainians don't even want to go and fight this war any longer. They're fleeing the country.
It's a war of attrition with a stalemate. That's what we're looking at.
A war of attrition. This is a big mistake that he used that phrase there. It's a war of attrition. Because I'm going to tell you this. As far as how many Russian deaths, I recall, it was roughly a year, maybe as far back as 18 months ago, when we were totally in the dark as to how the war is progressing. Totally in the dark about how the war was progressing. And I remember seeing someone say, like, no, Ukrainians winning the war. Look at all these Russian deaths. And they gave a list of, like, I don't know, 1 million deaths or something like that, 1 million Russian deaths. And the question back was, how many Ukrainian deaths are there? Oh, that's not known. That's not known. But it's much bigger than that, because it's a war of attrition. I'll let Glenn finish making his point, and just hold that thought in your mind where Dan says there, it's a war of attrition.
Right now. That's the most honest way to look at it.
I'm sorry to say, one of the things that I know that you don't have to go join the military to understand is that Russia is many, many, many times larger than Ukraine. And that's the reason why the most prescient geopolitical experts, people have been on this show, I've interviewed them many times, people like John Mearsheimer and Jeffrey Sachs and Stephen Wald, all said since 2022, Ukraine will inevitably lose this war and Russia will win it. And I'll tell you why. This is the one point I want to make. When President Obama was on his way out of office in 2016, Jeffrey Goldberg interviewed him for a cover story on the Obama foreign policy doctrine. And he criticized Obama for not standing up to Russia in Syria and in Ukraine. And what Obama said was, the reality is Ukraine is and always has been and always will be a vital interest to Russia because it's right on the other side of their border, and it has never been and never will be a vital interest to the United States. So the idea that we're going to confront Russia or go to war with Russia over who governs various provinces in eastern Ukraine is absolute madness.
All right,
and President Obama was absolutely right, and President Trump thinks that too.
Yeah. So even Obama thinks that we're never going to beat Russia over Ukraine. And that's one interesting argument that Glenn Greenwald puts out there, as far as the level of interest that Russia has in it is far greater than ours. And obviously the will to accomplish something when you're fighting against someone else who has a will and they have a stronger motivation, that's a much fiercer opponent. And that usually will lead to success, certainly if it's backed by sufficient strength and finances. Putting that aside, it's not just that they have an interest. It's not just that they're on the other side of the Russian border. I think that's really underselling their interests. They have a financial interest in their own financial viability as far as controlling Ukraine so they can establish a pipeline to the EU for natural gases. So they have a financial interest, which is a far greater financial interest than we have. We don't even guarantee on the money that we gave them. The EU at least has some sort of financial interest. We have no financial interest in the Ukraine, but it's far deeper than that, in that there are a lot of Russians living in Ukraine. For a long time, Ukraine was part of Russia. So it's kind of like they sort of feel like this is our family. This is our extended family. So you're trying to basically keep people who look at it as like, this is part of our family. And we're standing there saying, no, they're divorced from you. You don't have nearly the same interests on with respect to geographical scope, with respect to financial interest, or with respect to your tie to the land. Like Putin, when he talks about Ukraine, talks about it like, as part of the motherland. That's the same way you feel about America, or let's just say maybe not the way you feel about America, but the same way you might feel about Alaska, which is part of, and I know some of you are from Alaska. I get it. My point is, you might not feel, if you're an American living in the 48, in the lower 48, you might not feel the same type of to Hawaii. You might not feel that same sort of emotional attachment. Hawaii kind of earned something with Pearl Harbor, I think, as far as developing, even though they became a state afterwards. But, well, anyhow. Yeah, my point is that there's some emotional attachment there that Russia, Russians, and Putin have for Ukraine, which far exceeds any emotional investment that America or the EU has for Ukraine. And that's a deal. That's a big deal. But I want to come back to what he mentioned about a war of attrition. Dan Crenshaw said this is a war of attrition, and he's right. It is a war of attrition. But you want to know what the problem with this being a war of attrition is? The numbers of bodies. Russia historically has succeeded in winning wars by throwing body after body after body. And when you shoot down this body, there's another one behind it, and another one, and another one, and another one. They are masters of wars of attrition. Ask Adolf. Adolf was mowing through Russian after Russian after Russian after Russian. Some of the Russians there in the front line, according to book 1941, I was reading a year ago or so, was basically like they didn't even go in there with arms. They were like, the guy in front of you is going to drop dead. When he's going to get shot and killed. When he falls, pick up his gun and keep fighting. That's the way Russia fights wars. They throw bodies at it. So yeah, it's like this is like, oh, you know what? I'm going to get a war of attrition, a financial war of attrition on advertising. Let's say advertising wins in elections. I'm going to run an election against Elon Musk. And no, my dollars are going to go a lot further than his because I have more effective campaigning or whatever. Okay. I'm more magnetic or whatever reasons. It's like, what the hell is my money going to do next to Elon Musk? Even if dollar for dollar, I'm knocking out $4 of his for every $1 mine. He has 4,000, I wish. Perhaps the analogy of me to Elon is off in that sense because it's not like Russia is like 40 million times the size of Ukraine. But you understand the point. When you're dealing with someone who has so much financial wealth, even if the way you're spending your money is more effective, they're gonna drown you. Just drown you. What are you gonna do? There's nothing you can do. They're just gonna drown you. So yeah, you know what? If Ukraine is knocking people off on a 4-to-1 ratio, which I think is a flat out lie. I think it's crap. No one knows that to be true. I think that's just a made up number that they're like, oh, that sounds really good and impressive. And wow, aren't they noble and strong and amazing? That I don't know. Somehow that when they're down to little children and 60-year-old men, they're knocking people off they're knocking off these Russian soldiers who are come stormtrooping in there, and they're knocking off on a 4-to-1 ratio. If you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. But even if they were doing that, there's still too many. There's too many. You're not going to win who's the last person to win a war of attrition with Russia? Tell me who that was. That's what I wish Glenn Greenwald would have said. Oh yeah, it's a war of attrition. Okay, who's the last? Name the last conqueror. Name or defense. Who's the war of attrition with Russia? Doesn't happen. I guess to be fair, the counter argument is, well, what about Afghanistan? Afghanistan had a big advantage over Ukraine, and this is one of the things that Trump keeps pointing out. Afghanistan is filled with mountains and crevices, and it's basically like when America goes into Vietnam. It's like under every rock and tree and shrub, there's some enemy combatant who's ready to pop up there and cap you. But that's not the way it is in Ukraine. I mean, that thing is flatter than Kansas. So it's not like you can use your home terrain to your advantage the way you can in some of these other nations there. War of attrition. Good luck. Good luck. So that's your little update as to who's winning or losing the war. Oh, thank you so much. My sweet you. My sweet you. Love you. Thank you so much, Gene. That's very kind of you. Since yesterday was kickback day, shouldn't we get 2-hour extension rather than just 1 for 15 yells? Just the messy. The aliens want the 2-hour extension. P.S. The new Tom-Toms arrived. Yay! Very excited for you. Don't think he's a dictator. He tends to bend over. Family show. Family show. When USSR collapsed in 91, Ukraine became the third largest nuclear power. For non-proliferation, we promised to protect our borders and buying slow walked our antique equipment. Different effort equals better OC. I've heard this claim before, Richard. I've heard this claim before. Here's my question to you on that. Here's my question. I've addressed this because I think it's a fair point. You talk about the promise that we made in exchange for their non-proliferation and turning over their nukes to us. If that is the case, I'm assuming that this is the case. We also made promises not to expand NATO eastward. We broke those promises. And that's what led to this, arguably. Some say not. Some say that's a fig leaf cover that Putin uses. That it's not really why he went into Ukraine. And frankly, I don't know that's why he went into Ukraine. I really think that the K2 pipeline was a big deal to him. Bigger deal than the fact that we expanded eastward. But I don't know. It's my own speculation. I'm speculating the same as anyone else on what his motivation was. I think it's a combination of these factors, and maybe one factor was significantly more important, or maybe they were more equal with each other. I don't know. I'll tell you one factor that definitely played in also was the fact that Biden looked so weak in Afghanistan. We looked incompetent. Which is why I think if Trump won the war, I don't think there would be a war in Ukraine right now. But this non-proliferation thing, so I have to ask you, is that like a forever promise? Is that like for the next... When does that promise die? At what point does that promise die? At what point? And how far are we supposed to go on that? Does that mean we have to send American troops there? Does that mean we have to spend trillions of dollars, risk our lives, like risk American lives there? You sort of have to come to like, okay, what does that promise mean? And I think what you're making, Rich, I think you're making a fair point here. I think it's a fair point. But the question is, that was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, we made that promise. How long is that? How long can they call that in on us? 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, 500 years? Like, at what point is it like, no, we've honored that promise? I think you have to give a real, and it's not like we didn't give it. We gave them $200 million. $200 billion. Shame on me for making that mistake. $200 billion. Like, at what point is it like, yeah, we kind of lived up to that. We kind of lived up to that by now. Because that's a very heady, and it's like, so, and because of the fact that the reason we wanted it was it's not like they would have had the nukes. The concern was that they were going to be overrun and the nukes would be taken from them by someone who was more dangerous. I think that was the grave concern back in 91. So we were like, okay, look, we don't want someone else getting their hands on these nukes. So we'll take, I don't think they would still have the nukes today. I don't know, but so I sort of asked myself, there has to be a deadline as to when that ends. I think it's a fair point you're raising, but I think it's also fair to counter and say, so how far is that? How long? What's the scope of time? And this, what are the terms behind that promise? How long is the promise going for? How far do we have to invest into making sure that they stay safe? And have we not crossed that point at this point? So, but it is a fair point. It is a fair point. Anyhow, so Trump's statements case you just joined the last couple minutes, the key statement that he made that we brought up here, that I brought up here earlier, was that he referred to him as a dictator without elections. Zelensky is a dictator who's shut down political enemies, banned speech he didn't like, that hasn't had an election, basically made himself leader for life, or at least as long as until he feels otherwise. And Trump's claim that he's a dictator outraged some folks on the left. Bernie's saying Trump and his American oligarchs are now openly aligning themselves with Putin and his Russian oligarchs. The Putin-Trump alliance means abandoning our ally. The Putin-Trump alliance means abandoning our allies, supporting authoritarianism, and undermining our democratic traditions. Yeah, because Zelensky is very democratic. He's very, very democratic. Very democratic. Yeah, he's well beyond his current term and isn't allowing for elections until he changes his mind, which that might happen, I guess. At some point, that might happen. But no elections for you. But Putin at least got, I don't know, Putin got him by election. Now, you can say those elections are corrupt. Good chance they are. I should put that in here. This is good. This might tick some people off. This is going to get some folks on the left really angry at me. Do a little shruggy emotion. We got to find the shruggy guy. Where's the shruggy guy? I guess so. Where's the shruggy guy? There he is. All right, let's go on. More Bernie for you. I got more Bernie. Let's hear from Bernie himself. Bernie's got things to say to you. Bernie.
Thanks, everybody, for joining me to discuss a very, very serious issue. Yesterday, we witnessed an extremely sad moment in American history. We saw the President of the United States aligning himself with the dictator of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to undermine the independence of Ukraine and its democracy. Let's be clear. Trump is showing us that he sees one of the world's most brutal dictators as his friend and our longtime democratic allies in Europe as his enemies.
I don't look at it that way. I think he would call both of them dictators.
He wants a world that is safe for authoritarians and oligarchs, but extremely dangerous for democracies.
I said this the other day, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to just say this again. The term democracy is rooting for evil. It just is. Democracies are inherently evil and always have been. It's a tyranny by a majority instead of an individual. Unless it's girded by a robust constitution that protects the minority. And that's why the democratic element to our country has been such a net positive. But what the left does is they take the fact that democracy has, in general, been a very strong positive here in this country. Some would claim otherwise since the signing of the 19th Amendment. But as in general, been a very healthy thing for our country, and they pretend that such is the case for every democracy ever. And any democracy we can help prop up is a benefit to them and somehow indirectly to us. And that's simply not true. It's simply not true. It's just a fiction. So it's an unfair thing that they have the benefit of living in a place where we have democracy, and that democracy is kept in check in a very healthy way with our electoral college, with our civil rights. All these measures that are implemented to make sure that we're not going to have a tyranny by the majority. In the same way we don't have some evil king, we don't have some evil majority, hopefully, that's able to control us. So when he's sitting here, they think that the word democracy is inherently good. Most of you probably at some point in your life thought that the term democracy is inherently good. That's how we are trained. We are trained to start with a starting point of democracy equals good. You've all heard the analogy that democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what to eat for dinner. And we have the luxury here in this country of not having to have that concern. But the reason we don't have that concern is not because democracy is magically good here. It's that democracy is kept in check by ensuring the minority is not devoured by the majority. So when they're sitting here saying that other countries, we need to help democracy, that's just saying help evil, because they don't have our constitution. They don't implement any means of protecting the minority from the tyranny of the majority. It's a lie that is a very easily marketable lie.
Will not surprise you when I tell you that Trump is lying, as he so often does. Yesterday, Trump said that Ukraine started the war. That's not true.
I question how he said that. He did say that Ukraine started the war, which I think that's not really a fair. That is a slightly revisionist perspective that Trump is employing there. I don't think it's fair to say that Ukraine started the war. I mean, they were invaded by Russia. You know, I guess he would try to say that the Maidan uprising of 2014 is what led to this. That's not starting a war with a different state, though. That's an internal coup, which Obama implemented, USAID implemented. That's an internal coup, which you can have all sorts of questions about that. But that's not Zelensky starting the war, certainly. So, and I question Trump's position in making that claim.
Invaded Ukraine twice. First in 2014, and then again in 2022, right?
That's crap. That's kind of crap.
Now, Russia occupies about 20%.
They invaded them because they had to get the Crimean port. And that's because that was spurred by actions that the West took, which we admit that we were behind that uprising in 2014. So just historically, in case you're unfamiliar with what happened, there was a more pro-Russian leader in Ukraine in 2014. He was overthrown and deposed when the public basically rose up against him and deposed him, and an anti-Russian leader was implemented back in 2014, Maidan uprising. There has come out over the last several years that American intelligence and propaganda basically motivated the Ukrainian populace to overthrow them. After that happened, Russia was cut off from Crimea. Crimea is the only warm weather port that Russia had access to. So they invaded and took over Crimea, because without that, most of their fleet is useless for like 7 months a year because their their western ports, which are on the Pacific, their eastern ports, which are on their east coast is the Pacific Ocean, are so far north that their ships are frozen in for 7 months a year because it's just so cold. Crimea is a warm weather port. You can keep your ships there in the dead of winter, and you'll still be able to use those ships. So they basically felt they had no choice, and they took over Crimea. And they were holding it basically since 2014. So that's why they went in there. But that was spurred on by the fact that they were otherwise going to be shut out because of the uprising, which we here in America, our intelligence agencies and our American intelligence agencies were the ones to spur it on.
Of Ukraine. Since Putin's horrific invasion, over 1 million people have been killed or injured. Every single day, Russia continues to rain down hundreds of missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities. Putin's forces have massacred civilians and kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, bringing them back to Russian re-education camps.
Horrible.
These atrocities led the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin in 2023 as a war criminal.
I don't know what the International Criminal Court is. I think that's all. That's like judgments from the International Criminal Court to me are basically like monopoly. It's like monopoly money. Only it's like a monopoly decision.
A war.
It's like you might as well say to me, like, there's the dungeon master from some Dungeons and Dragon game declared Putin to be a hobgoblin for all the ICC is worth. It's just about as impactful.
Or criminal. Further, Trump called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator. That's not true either. Zelensky won 75% of the vote in free elections. In fact,
he didn't. Why didn't he allow an election then last time? Why didn't he allow it? Why would he abolish elections
his approval rating is higher than Trump's.
Oh, is it really? Really? I think that's an outright lie. That's an outright lie. That is, you talk about lying to the people. That right there is an outright lie. Today, I'm positive that Trump has greater approval here in America than Zelensky has. Because you know why? You want to know how we know that's true? Because Trump got 77 million votes and he's only more popular now than he was in November. He's more popular now than he was in November. And he got 77 million votes. And Zelensky is terrified to have an election. Why? Why so for having an election? You would think that with if he has an election, he cuts out the Donbas region, he cuts out Luhansk, and he cuts those regions out, which are largely Russian populations. He should have an even greater chance of winning re-election, and yet still he didn't hold an election. Abolish them, abolishing enemy political parties. 11 of them. So you tell me he's more. That is a stupid lie.
In the midst of a brutal war, Ukraine's parliament continues to function.
Maybe they're counting like Americans who support Ukraine in that he's more popular. That crap.
And free and unfettered political debate takes place.
No, it doesn't. That's another lie. This is one lie after another. This is one friggin' lie after another. Oh my God. You propagandist. You're such a sellout.
That our European allies have done little to support Ukraine.
This is the guy. Here's what you talk about: fork-tongued Bernie Sanders. Talk about this fork-tongued guy. This is the guy who was raving about how Russia was just a model economy like 10 years ago. He's sitting here talking about how it's just a model place under Putin 10 years ago. And now all of a sudden, when he was running for election in 2016, he's like, well, Russia's a good thing. It's a good thing. People stand in line for bread. That's a good thing. Yeah, I know he's really popular with some populists from the left. I think he's a lunatic.
In its fight against Putin's invasion. He said the United States has contributed 3 times more than Europe.
He didn't say
but that's another lie.
He didn't say
In
that.
fact, Europe has provided more aid to Ukraine than the United States.
Really? I think he didn't say 3 times more. He said there's been a total of $350 billion in aid, and we've given $200 million of it. He also said ours is not guaranteed, and theirs is. Where do you have facts that show Europe has provided more aid? What are the numbers? Give us the numbers, Bernie.
But it's not just that Trump is lying again. That's not new. It's what this all reveals about where he wants to take our country and, in fact, the entire world. Trump is cozying up to Vladimir Putin. So who is Putin? And what kind of world does he want to build? Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end of the Cold War.
Here he goes with his whole democracy equals good.
Russia holds sham elections every 6 years.
I thought it was every 10 years. I thought it was every 10 years. Maybe that's China has every 10 years.
Where Putin wins 90% of the vote, and authorities don't even try to hide their ballot stuffing.
Oh, I agree with him. I think that elections in Russia are a sham. That's why I was kind of making a joke about democracy, favoring Putin in my tweet there.
There is no freedom of speech or free media in Putin's Russia.
Or in Zelenskyy's Ukraine.
Protests are violently suppressed. Tens of thousands of people are in prison for protesting Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, Russia's a pretty bad place. I agree with him on that. It's a pretty bad place. We just have very little evidence that Ukraine is any better.
Political dissidents are harassed or thrown into jail.
Oh, like that Gonzalez reporter who was thrown in jail by Ukraine and got killed because he was too critical of Zelensky?
The bravest, people like Alexei Navalny, are killed outright. Hundreds of thousands of Russians have fled Putin's brutal regime since his invasion of Ukraine. But Putin has maintained control in his country by offering Russia's oligarchs a simple deal. If you give me absolute power, I'll let you steal as much as you want from the Russian people.
I do agree there's probably a great deal of corruption in Russia. Like I said, I don't think Russia's a great place. I just think we have very little evidence that Ukraine is any better.
And that's why in a country where many are struggling economically, Russian oligarchs have stashed trillions of dollars in offshore tax accounts. That is the Russian leader that Trump admires. That is the Russian oligarchy that he supports. But that is not the perspective of the American people. We know, and we are proud of, the fact that the United States of America is the longest standing democracy in the world. We know that many hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, and the reason we're the longest standing democracy in the world is because we're a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy. We just have a democratic feature to our constitutional republic. That's the reason why it's worked here.
Of brave Americans over the years have fought and died to defend democracy.
No, that's not what they were defending. Not a single soldier, American soldier, died to defend democracy. That's where we're not a democracy.
We also know that our allies in the world are those countries that believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. In this critical moment in our history, I hope that every American, regardless of political perspective, will stand tall and say yes to democracy, no to oligarchy, and no to authoritarianism. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. I really should put a video response to that because there's so many lies in there. I need to debate Richard a little bit more. Trump wants $5 billion in rare earths for our effort. Well, that doesn't sound right. $5 billion in rare earths for our effort. Those are located in Luhansk, Donbass, and Kharkiv. That's why Russia entered. World War II Russia was being invaded. Not today. And your promise is limited? I mean, $5 billion in rare earths is like nothing compared to what we've given them. But so I'm not sure where you're going with that. I don't think Russia entered for $5 billion. And you're right. When they were being invaded, the war of attrition favors them all the more so than when they were. Here's the thing I pointed out from, like, you know, the Putin's struggle is, I mean, we saw in Afghanistan where the longest war we ever had. It's like you can hold a country and then what? I mean, we talk about war of attrition. At a certain point, it's like, for how long? For how long are you holding it? Are you going to be able to hold it forever? You sort of need to leave the local population in control. You look historically at countries. I'm talking historically, I mean ancient history. Rome conquered vast swaths of territories. They, or when Alexander the Great conquered massive swaths of territories, which he conquered all, or Genghis Khan. You have to sort of, what you do is you implement people there who are sort of locals and are controlling it with pledging their fealty to you. But you sort of, you don't have the manpower just to like maintain control of it without getting that cooperation from the locals, because you just can't be everywhere all the time. So even if he were to succeed in controlling Ukraine, you sort of have to ask, you know, how is he going to hold it? And I guess if they instituted some pro-Russian leader in charge of Ukraine, in that case, he would be using the local forces to implement those who are pledging fealty to Russia. My question is, like Richard, I asked you the question as far as promises being limited. Like that promise to protect them, which I haven't seen a written promise. I'm assuming it's in writing somewhere. I think it was there might have been some sort of treaty. I need to sort of look at it. I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask did America pledge to protect Ukraine when we took there? I'm asking Grok. Grok 3. I know there's a name. I think there is an agreement. Ooh, interesting. Here's Grok's take on it. Here's Grok's take. I asked a question. Did America pledge to protect Ukraine when we took their nukes? No, America did not pledge to protect Ukraine militarily when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. Here's the breakdown. 94, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine inherited a significant nuclear arsenal. As part of an effort to reduce the number of nuclear-armed states, Ukraine agreed to relinquish those weapons under the Budapest Memorandum signed by the United States, the UK, Russia, and Ukraine. In exchange, Ukraine received security assurances, but those were not the same as promise of military protection. What did the memorandum say? Respect Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, refrain from the threat or use of force against Ukraine, seek UN Security Council action if Ukraine faced aggression involving nuclear weapons. However, it did not commit the U.S. or any other signatory to defend Ukraine with military force if its borders were violated. Unlike NATO's Article 5, which binds members to collective defense, the Budapest Memorandum was a political agreement, not a legally binding treaty, and its assurances were limited in scope. When Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, later invaded Ukraine in 2022, the U.S. and UK responded with economic sanctions, military aid, and diplomatic support. But they did not send troops to Ukraine, and this reflects the nature of the assurances. They were not about supporting Ukraine's sovereignty through diplomatic and economic means, not guaranteeing. They were about supporting Ukraine's sovereignty through diplomatic and economic means, not guaranteeing its defense with military intervention. So there you go. There you go. The Budapest memo is often misunderstood as a NATO-like pledge, but it wasn't. Ukraine gave its nukes for assurances that were deliberately vague, more like a promise to raise the alarm and offer help rather than a commitment to step in as a protector. Think of it as a neighborhood watch rather than a police force. News agreed to support Ukraine, but not sign up to fight its battles. So the bottom line is America pledged to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and provide support if it was threatened, but did not pledge military protection. The Budapest Memorandum was about diplomacy and aid, not a defense pact. So to answer your question directly, no, the U.S. did not promise to protect Ukraine with force when it took their nukes. I think that's a pretty definitive answer right there. It's a pretty good answer. This is the worst Waldorf Muppet puppeteer. Hey, why don't you guys get the show started? NATO's defensive org, the only reason for no expansion is Russia's future plans to take back land. F Putin and F Russia. Like I said, I don't like Putin. But my love for the members of our military is far greater than my hate for Putin. The other problem I had with this war is that there's no stated objective to the war. This is, and I actually said this to Senator, what's his face? When I was in DC for the inauguration, a month ago for the inauguration. I said this to Senator Langford when I met him. If you didn't see what I think I posted on Locals. But I met Senator Langford at that ball that I attended. And I spent a few minutes talking with him. And I told him, who I was and that I host this show and I'd talk about law and politics. And what I said to him was, one of the things that I tell my audience regularly is the difference between a movement and a mob is that a movement is looking to get somewhere. They say, this is where we are today. We're not happy about that. Our objective is to get here. And when we get there, we've obtained our objective and we're done. You saw that. So, the women's movement of a century ago, as women don't have a right to vote, we want to get them the right to vote. It's clear, stated objective. When we get there, we win. That was what feminism, first wave feminism was. Second wave feminism was about, equal pay, equal rights. You can argue in third wave feminism, a mess. But as I explained to Senator Langford, that's a movement. It's called a movement because they're moving from one place to another, and you know where their goal is. Everyone knows. Everyone's on the same page. This is where we are moving to. That is a movement, and that can potentially have positive impacts. Abolitionism, abolish slavery. That is a movement. We want to end slavery. Right now, slavery exists. We want to end slavery. That was a movement, a great movement, a very important and healthy movement. Movements can be healthy, they can be powerful, and they can be great. And they can accomplish phenomenal things, like those two things. But certainly abolition, certainly abolishing slavery, and even getting women the right to vote, though some people would say, you can make a very strong argument even about that one. The reason people say, is because ever since women got the right to vote, elections have been very messy. But the point being, and I'm certainly not looking to reverse that. Even though I might make a joke about it here and there. I'm certainly not genuinely trying to reverse that. I'm also definitely not trying to reverse equal pay. I think that's a great thing. But the point I'm getting at is that's what makes it a movement is you know where you're starting and you know where we're getting to. And then when you get there, we won and that's it. Huzzah. When you don't have a stated end game, it is not a movement. That is a mob. That is chaos. So with BLM, we want equal justice. Equal justice. That's not something that you can define because justice means different things to every single human being. No two people define justice identically. So when you say equal justice, that just means we're going to keep fighting. So we keep fighting, and you can always say we don't have justice yet. There's no end. There's no stated end. There's no clearly understood end. You're just rallying up passionate people who feel angry about a particular issue. And that's not a movement. That's chaos. And chaos means that the people who are leading the charge are doing it for their own personal money, their own personal wealth and fame and power. That is what is the difference between a movement and a mob. And the people at the top know that. And they'll try and state, we saw BLM wrote all sorts of things, what we want. But even their stated objectives were very, very murky. And that's purposeful. It's purposeful because they don't have a clear agenda. Not having a clear agenda enables you to continually fight forever. That's a mob. And that means there are grifters at the top. And this is what I said to him a little bit more succinctly than this because I was trying to make sure I didn't lose his attention. With you guys, I hope that I am able to maintain your attention. With Ukraine, there's no stated objective. We don't know. Is the objective to get rid of Putin? Is the objective to take over Moscow? Is the objective to hold a certain line? Is the objective to recover every area of Ukraine that was taken over? There's no clearly stated objective. No one knows what those objectives are, which means it's a mob, which is why there's grifting, which is why people at the top are getting rich and passions are being inflamed. It's very easy to inflame passions because on the other side of the ledger, you're dealing with Putin. He's definitely a bad guy. He's not a good guy. He's a terrible guy. He's a terrible human being. But the world has a lot of terrible human beings in it. And many of them, unfortunately, too many of them, are leaders of powerful nations. Frankly, Russia is much less of a threat to us than China. It's also led by a terrible human being. So, who abuses rights, doesn't have fair and free elections, doesn't allow for free speech, but we're not going to China to save the Uyghurs. Good, but we're not. I'm not saying we should. I'm simply saying there are a lot of terrible people out there. In Africa, countless terrible people leading countries. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the world. They're terrible people. Why is it that Putin is the top of the list, that he's the Darth Vader of the planet? It doesn't make sense. Especially when we're throwing all this money and we have no idea to what end. What is a win? No one knows. If a win is just getting back our border, then what happens the next time he does something we don't like? So we're going to fight him again? There's a lot of bad people out there. And America is exhausted with playing world police. Sometimes let the kids squabble. And one of them might be a bigger bully than the other, might be more powerful. It's unfortunate. But to say that it's our responsibility to ensure that that people act nicely with each other, I think it's an unfair burden to place on the American people. So certainly an unfair burden to put on our military. But even if it's not our military, I think it's an unfair burden to put on the American taxpayer. And I think what happens is that passions get inflamed, and then people try pushing out there saying, like, we have to throw our money at this problem because we have endless supply of money, apparently. That's what everyone that's talking about America just assumes America has an endless supply of money. Somehow we're $37 trillion in debt, but we have an endless supply of money. So, yeah, I'll march with you saying F Putin, F Russia. That doesn't mean I want to send money. Be a great thing for the world if Putin would just drop dead. That'd be great. Be a good thing for the world. It's positive for the world. Putin drops dead. But we have to deal with reality. Reality situation is a terrible person who has to be in charge of a pretty dangerous country. And there's a lot of those, unfortunately. John, thank you for the tip. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. We did hit 15, so I am going 3 hours. We're at the 2-hour mark, and I'm going for at least another hour. At least another hour. So buckle up, get your popcorn ready to go. 500 billion. You said in minerals. And are your promises time limited? And Russia's about to implode Budapest Memorandum. The Budapest Memorandum, so we pulled that up. I pulled that up for you. Budapest Memorandum is, we're going to try and we'll raise the flag for you. But I think that Budapest Memorandum is very different from NATO. I will tell you this. Historically, Russian leaders are impossible to deal with. Impossibly stubborn. Impossibly stubborn. I told this story over, I think, before you started following the show, Richard Parker. At least before I've seen you now for several months. Several months I noticed you here. I'm not sure how long you've been following this show. I think I told this story over probably before you joined. From that book 1941, the year the war turned, which starts a little before 1941 and runs through the course of the war on all fronts through 1941, and how Churchill was desperately trying to get FDR to join the war. In that book, they tell over how after Poland fell to a combination of Germany and Russia, they got invaded from both sides. And first, they got hit with the Blitzkrieg, and Russia followed from the Eastern Front, or Poland's Eastern Front, and they got swallowed up in a month, and Poland was carved up between those two nations. So they talk about how in the course of 1941 that Germany invaded Russia in June of 1941 and was destroying Russia. I mean, mowing them down. That's what I was talking about, how they threw body after body after body at them. And that's where I read about how they didn't have enough arms even to fight them. So they just sent people to the front and said, pick up your fallen comrade's rifle and start firing. It's terrible hunger that was going on. It was, and then you had the Einsatzgruppen, which was basically every time they find a Jew, it's like, let's just kill him here. It was a disaster. It was Adolf was just plowing through. And there was the question whether they were going to go to Stalingrad or they're going to go to Moscow. And it was St. Petersburg. I'm forgetting now. Anyway, the bottom line is they ended up, whether you want to get the capital, and that actually explained how he was very afraid of repeating the mistake that Napoleon had made, where he went to Moscow, and once he got to Moscow, he got crushed. Stalin saw the war going so terribly that there was a point during the early stages of the war that he's sure his own generals were going to kill him. There was a reported incident where one time people came knocking on his door, and he was sure that they were there to assassinate him, and that his own generals and his own army was about to turn on him because he basically ignored the threat of Adolf and said, no, he's not going to invade, all the way until as the troops were amassing on his border. He's not going to invade, because he was terrified, and it was more a hope than dealing with reality. And he thought he was being held to account for it. So when they came in, so he starts begging America and UK to help him. And they're trying to negotiate across the ocean. And they're trying to negotiate terms with Stalin. He got to a point where he was on a train track, and he was on a train rail and train station and trying to decide, do I flee eastward deeper into Russia, or do I stay here? This is how afraid he was. He was personally going to die. Meanwhile, he's begging the Allies to send him money and troops and not troops and money and arms and supplies. He's begging them because he feels like Russia's going to fall. There's no way. This German war machine was way too tough. This guy was terrified for his own life. And Churchill and FDR said to him, this is what all we want is this. Promise us that when we win the war, you're going to give back that part of Poland that you conquered 2 years ago in 1939. You're just going to promise that you're going to give that back to Poland. And he said, That's ours. We're not giving that up. And they're like, just say the words you're going to do it. Just tell us no, I'm not doing. He's willing literally to have Hitler roll tanks over his own throat before he was even willing to give up any land that he got. That's what I say. You talk about stubborn. It doesn't matter. Gun to his head, tanks rolling up to his own generals, potentially assassin. No. I'm not giving up. No. I mean, that is a remarkable stubbornness, like an insane level of his stubbornness, like literally willing. That's a crazy story. I read that. I was like, I don't know if you call that balls or insanity. I really don't know if you call that balls or insanity. I really don't know. It's one of them. Maybe it's a mixture of both. What would you call that? Would you call that insanity or you call that balls? Bernie honeymoon was in Russia. Yeah, he was massive supporter of Russia. As I grow older, I find increasingly I have bowel mobs. Also, as we as society will never be truly happy until we can end women's suffrage. I knew I was walking into a dangerous territory. Ladies, let me tell you this. If you didn't have the right to vote, you probably would be most of you watching this show. If women did not have the right to vote, you probably would be happier with the results of a lot more of our elections. So I know that the idea of saying, take away my right to vote, is a difficult line, and I'm definitely not advocating to end it. I don't want to be misquoted as Joe wants to end women's suffrage, but I will tell you, most of the women watching, the overwhelming majority of women on my show would be a lot happier with the outcome of elections if women never got a right to vote. Is there a lot of liberal lefties? A lot of liberal lefties. Putin and Zelensky both deserve to be hissed at. Yeah, they do. I think they're both. I don't think either of them are heroes. But because he's deemed such a bad person, Putin's deemed such a bad person, so Zelensky has to be the mirror opposite. Instead of just saying, maybe they're both not great people. And maybe Putin's a little bit worse. Maybe it probably is a little worse. Probably is a little worse. Probably is. But it's like, are they that different? Are they that different? If you ask me my heart of hearts, I'll tell you right this. On this, if the higher up is worst person, I would say Putin's probably up here. And Zelensky's up here. He's not as terrible a person. He's not as terrible. But that's far from saying that he's a good person. Or that it's a massive win. It's a huge win. Maybe. I don't know. Extremists overthrew an elected president, massacred protesters, bombed cities, then refused to acknowledge the coup, closed churches that didn't support them, arrested opposition, suspended elections. Not great neighbors, in my opinion. I know. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's any saints here. I mean, don't even get me started on the Azov battalion. Don't even get me started on them. Which, those reports came out pretty early. The Azov battalion they're freaking racists. They're a bunch of freaking racists. They're terrible people. So, democracy. Bowel mobs as opposed to movements. Oh, gosh. That took me. I had to go in my head. That went over my head. I got you. I know. That's good. That's good. One other person who's really mad at Trump for calling him a dictator, the voice of reason, John Bolton. Trump's characterizations of Zelensky in Ukraine are some of the most shameful remarks ever made by a U.S. president. Our support of Ukraine has never been about charity. Our way of life at home depends on our strength abroad. Idiot. God, what a disaster that guy was. All right. So we covered Doge and we covered Ukraine. I think we covered both of those now pretty thoroughly. I think it's just one side thing here. you talk about, like, as far as people turning sides, like John Bolton, or these people switching sides. I saw this and I'm like, everyone, you all heard of Lindi Li. She's the former Democratic person, vice chair or something like that, who became Republican after the election or something like that, and basically was calling out all the problems in the Democratic Party. Well, Piers Morgan tweeted this at her. I thought this was funny, so I wanted to share it with you. Hi, Lindi Li. I'm confused. On Monday, you told me you didn't vote for Kamala in the 2024 election, but you posted this on your X account on October 3rd. Though oddly, you have now deleted overnight. What's going on? Where she said, always a joy with the next president of the United States. We're just 32 days out from Election Day. I already voted for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania. Philly said they received my ballot. What are you all going to do to elect our beloved VP Harris? Tell me in the comments. Lindi. Don't trust any of these snakes. Never trust them. Never trust a snake. Never trust them. No. I saw that, so I wanted to share it with you. Before I get to congestion pricing, which we are going to get to that in great detail, let's turn to the interview now. I think it's a good time because I've been doing a lot of talking, and I can use a little bit of a break here from talking. Stephen Miller's interview. This is Stephen Miller's interview on CNN. I don't know this woman's name. I'm sure some of you do. This is actually a pretty long interview, but that's okay. Because Stephen rocks this thing. And who the hell is ever going to watch CNN if I don't share it with you? So this is something that we on the right should all see and appreciate. Stephen Miller, God bless this man.
So who is in charge of DOGE?
The President of the United States.
He's the administrator of DOGE?
No, the DOGE is what was formerly U.S. Digital Services. It's an agency of the federal government that reports into the office of
you guys know her name?
The President, which reports to the President of the United States.
Okay.
The way that Article 2 works is a president wins an election, and then he appoints staff, including myself, including Mike Waltz, including Susie Wiles, including Elon Musk, and those staff report to him.
Okay, well aware. So Elon Musk a week ago answered a question about transparency at DOGE. This is how he spoke about DOGE.
Oh, I missed stuff. Before we get into this whole him talking about DOGE, I missed the ghetto, and they're gonna kick my butt if I don't cover this. Remember, democracy never lasts long. This is Barrett Boy. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was democracy yet that did not commit suicide. That's John Adams. Duckfast says, Joe, you say Democratic Party every day. It's the Democrat Party. Yet you wonder why the MSM propagandists say we're in a democracy. You're only helping them revise the definition of democracy. When I say Democratic Party, that's an insult. So, Digger 1980, John Reb says, Dig 1984, remind you to check the tunnels. I'm supposed to check the tunnels? Oh my God, I missed a lot in the tunnels. I'll go there in a second. Thank you for pointing that out to me. Johnny Reb, he showed a lot of stuff there in the tunnels. I'm going to check there in a moment. Thank you. I feel terrible because I missed so many of Johnny Reb's stuff, and he posts gold in the tunnels. The tunnels is a reference if you're unaware of it. If you're relatively new, maybe unaware. Tunnels is a reference to our chat going on right now as we speak in locals at goodlogic.locals.com, where Johnny Reb is a featured commentator there. He presents a lot of great stuff. Yes, FBI phones tomorrow at 2 p.m. Be good. Here comes Kash. Kash is coming for you. Jim Jones, head of the Food and Drug FDA's food division, just resigned to protest Trump's mass firings. Oh my God, that's really funny. That is really funny. That's the head of the FDA. That's pretty funny. Kind of ironic that his name was Jim Jones. No Kool-Aid here. No Kool-Aid. No Kool-Aid. Joe, the sending one person with a rifle and one with bullets is a myth perpetrated by losing German generals. It's enough that they're unprepared tank units without sufficient artillery, infantry, and mechanics to repair tanks. Most tanks ended up abandoned due to minor damage or surrounded and killed. The myth comes from 13 rifle divisions that was snuck across the Volga to Stalingrad, and some were left on the Channel Island for 12 hours, short rifles, but were supplied at landing. I don't think that's true. That's not nice. That's not nice. Pilot camera is responsible. Oh, okay. No, she's not at all responsible. Not at all responsible. Yeah, I'll fight you on this one. I've heard this before, and I've read it, and I'll get you the citations. I'll try and find it, and then I'll get back to you on it. I don't think it's a myth. I think you told me the same thing last time I told that story, which is like a year ago. If it wasn't you, someone else told me the same thing. I still believe it's true, though. So, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I appreciate you sharing the alternate perspective on that issue. All right. I think I'm caught up now. Let me, let's get into,
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle.
I don't know if Stephen Miller is really short or Elon Musk is really tall. I don't know but that's something.
On X and to the Doge website.
A podium?
So all of our actions are maximally transparent.
You hear him there. We post our actions. All of our actions are maximally transparent. Does Elon Musk know he's not in charge of Doge?
Again, the president runs the government. Then the president appoints advisors, including Elon, including myself, including all the other staff here at the White House. And then those staff, in turn, execute the president's commands and directions to all the agencies of the federal government. This is how democracy works.
Let me give you a civics class. See, he's in charge, and we report to him.
Something that we treasure in America. The whole American people go to the ballot box, they elect the president appoints staff, the staff that administer his orders and directives across the whole U.S. government.
Okay, Stephen, I get that, but this is important because we want to talk about who's making the decisions here. There were 300 employees, the National Nuclear Security Administration, you know about this. They were fired. The agency had to rescind those terminations because these were employees who were critical to maintaining the nation's nuclear stockpile. So then who is it making those decisions of which federal employees are terminated?
Well, in that case, the Secretary of Energy would be the one. So what you're describing with
none of the people you're talking about. See, that particular division is under the Secretary of Energy. See, he decides that.
The cuts in the Department of Energy, those are directed by the Senate confirmed Secretary of Energy.
Okay, so that was the Secretary of Energy's mistake.
Look at how she frames her question. Like, you assume it's a mistake, and it's like, so that's his mistake. It's so sick.
Well, I wouldn't use the term mistake. I would say that it's pretty standard when you're downsizing government. You make cuts, you assess those cuts, you see who needs to be rehired, who needs to be kept, who needs to be
That's not what happened here, though, Stephen. You know that they were rescinded. These aren't normal things. These were terminations that were rescinded.
I understand.
It's not rescinded, it's rescinded.
I understand that even a temporary interruption in federal employment is a great crisis and catastrophe for you and for CNN. What the American people see is a government that is finally delivering a promise of accountability under President Trump. You want to have a conversation about transparency? Let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea where the $22 billion that the Department of Health and Human Services provided to illegal aliens under Joe Biden is right now? 22 billion with a B. That's enough to provide a free house to every homeless veteran in America. Where's the $22 billion? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Joe Biden just spent it, and now it's gone. Transparency begins with having an accounting of where every federal dollar is spent. And God bless President Trump for leading this effort.
Stephen.
Nice. I love it. I love it.
It seems like the crisis here had to do with the nation's nuclear stockpile. And for these particular federal workers, which I'm not, so this isn't my personal crisis, military members.
No, but you're bringing it up. That's the whole point. You're bringing it up and you're labeling it some sort of crisis. What's the crisis? Tell us about what is the crisis?
Of the Guard
I don't
and the
think
Reserve.
it's a crisis,
well,
and
I
you don't
ask
think
you about
it's
this.
well. Hold on. I don't think it's a crisis,
Stephen,
and you don't think it's a crisis. Then why are we talking about it?
Military. Well, it is a crisis for
Why? What makes it a crisis?
some people. For instance, military
But
members.
you just said you didn't think it was a crisis.
It's not my crisis, Stephen. I'm not a federal employee.
Okay, so
So a crisis is someone being fired. That's a crisis. What does that mean? Is it the country's crisis or is it individual's crisis? You're the one labeling it crisis. What does that mean?
I don't think it's a crisis, and you don't think it's a crisis, so no one
It's
thinks
not
it's a
my
crisis.
personal crisis of employment. If you have concerns about the nation's nuclear stockpile, then it is obviously a crisis.
The concerns
it's an
that
issue of
So now you're saying it's an American crisis?
when it comes to
Stephen, please, we're
when it
getting
comes
off
to
track.
nuclear
I wanna
weapons,
ask
I'm not
you-
getting off track. He's trying to answer your question. It's like you just throw out there that it's a crisis. First you call it a mistake, then you call it a crisis. Well, what are you talking about?
Stephen, this is a very important question.
Well,
I need
you want to
ask
talk about
you.
nuclear security? I'm happy to. The nuclear stockpile in this country has been aging and unmonitored for years. President Trump is committed to the modernization
we're talking
of our
about
nuclear
Doge, Stephen.
stockpile and to historic investment in nuclear security.
Let me talk about Doge and why are you asking about the firing of the nuclear folks, which is the Department of Energy.
Additionally, the president is committed to preventing global nuclear war, which we have
Look at how the stupid chyron there. Trump administration struggled to rehire hundreds of really?
never been closer to than we are right now. And he is leading peace negotiations to end a war in Europe that could very well lead to a nuclear war, which is the worst possible nuclear catastrophe any of us could envision.
Okay, Stephen, so there are military members of the Guard and Reserve.
No one cares. No one cares what military members are saying. The Guard and Reserve are saying.
They are protected by law from being fired from their day job while they're deployed. I have learned that at one agency, an employee who's actually currently deployed with the military has been notified they've been fired.
Well, that's a crisis right there. Someone got fired? That's a crisis.
Does your administration understand who actually makes up this workforce that they're dismantling?
I'm sorry, I'm confused by your question. Is your question, does the president have the authority to fire a member of the U.S. military?
This is someone who is a federal employee and is currently deployed, who has government protection. As I'm sure you're aware,
There's
there are
a lot
laws
of
protecting that.
I don't know what laws you're referring to. I would love for you to be more specific. So far, you're not telling me the employee, the agency,
Uniformed
the
Services
deployment.
Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. It's well known by HR and the federal government. And
Why would you assume that that overrides his grant of authority to hire and fire whoever the hell he wants? Why would you just assume that?
in private industry as well.
So, okay, so you're saying that the president, in your view, doesn't have the authority to recall a member of the armed forces who may or may not, again, I'm the first time hearing of this, that may or may not be serving overseas?
Stephen, you understand how the Guard and Reserve work. They have a day job, and then when they're activated, they deploy. While they deploy,
right, but
that employment is protected by law.
Your question is lacking in so much detail. I promise you, I'm trying to follow your question. Are you asking me if the president has the authority to remove a member of the military who may be serving overseas? Is that your question?
No, my question was.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much airtime you want to spend on this, but I'm not following your question.
Well, I think it's an important one. I guess I'll determine how much airtime I spend on it. But does your administration?
What's her name? Brianna what? Brianna who?
Understand who is in the federal workforce.
I want to welcome to the ghetto all the bulldozers, all the bulldozers who just came streaming on in here. Welcome, you awesome bulldozers. While you're here, if you could please hit that little thumbs up, you might be able to push us over 100. So yeah, thank you, bulldozer. A little perspective here: the government contractors in the Energy Department are likely inspectors that sign off on yes, we can purchase the item built by the contractor who maintains security. All right.
Yes, we have such a broad question. Of course, we understand who's in the federal workforce, and I'm happy to indulge all of these very histrionic questions
That
about
it's
anyone who may or may not be
30%,
fired.
that it's 30% veterans.
But I think that
and that you have people who are deployed.
The U.S. government has $36 trillion in debt. The interest payments on the debt exceed the national defense budget. The American people are exhausted and tired of watching their tax dollars be corruptly spent, abused, wasted, and in every sense robbed and stolen from them. This president, for the first time in history, is committed to restoring accountability at every level of the federal government. You may assert there's no waste in the Pentagon. You may assert there's no waste in
Stephen,
Treasury.
I'm not
You may assert there's no waste in HHS.
Stephen, I don't think anyone.
Then why are you not celebrating these cuts? If you agree there is waste, if you agree there is abuse, if you agree there is corruption, why are you not celebrating the cuts, the reforms that are being instituted? Every day that no action is taken, the entire salaries of American workers that are taxed disappear forever.
Stephen, let's calm down.
This is
we're not having a debate.
There's no reason.
Oh, of course you're having a debate. Yeah, of course you are. You're framing everything in the most ludicrous way possible, and then saying we're not having a debate.
Whether there are
you are clearly trying to debate me, and I will be as excited as I want to be about the fact that we are saving Americans billions of dollars, that we are ending the theft and waste and grift and corruption, that we are stopping American taxpayer dollars from subsidizing a rogue federal bureaucracy that has been relentlessly weaponized against the American people.
Okay,
you may not care about this issue.
Talking about
your colleagues may not care about
an
this issue,
area
but we care about this issue. The American people care about this issue.
They also care about privacy.
And the American
so
public overwhelmingly supports what President Trump is doing.
Let's talk about IRS data the Doge will be able to access. You have Doge asking for access to the IRS systems. This includes the integrated data retrieval system. I know you've talked about this a little bit. Will Doge employees be able to access individual taxpayer ID numbers and social security numbers?
No. But also keep in mind, you keep
No. They're not going to be able to get individual taxpayer ID. Why would they get that?
Be able to access taxpayer bank account information.
What? Why would anyone think that they would? Why would anyone think that they would? Why would the government be allowed to access my what branch of government would be able to know? Why would anyone be able to know that? What the hell? And she's got this stupid smug. It's like one half of her face is smiling, the other is frowning. I don't know. This is the weirdest. This is like an emoji type face. This is a face I make when I'm just sort of like, when sometimes I'll use that slanting mouth type of thing. How does she do that? I can't. I don't have control my lip this way. Yeah. I can go left much better than I can go right. I don't know what's happening there.
They will not be able to access anything that any other appropriately authorized federal employee could access. When you keep talking about, quote, Doge employees, you're just talking about federal workers. You're just literally talking about federal workers. Your question may as well be, can federal workers do their job? The job of the federal workers at the IRS is to prevent. Well, I'm telling you that is actually what you are asking. DOGE is part of the federal government. It is a term to describe the employees of the federal government who've been tasked with anti-fraud and anti-corruption activities. Again, you may not consider it a scandal that millions of illegal aliens are accepting and receiving taxpayer benefits. You might not consider it a scandal that millions of illegal aliens have stolen Social Security numbers and are committing rampant theft of American resources.
You say that you're looking at widespread fraud in the IRS data, and you mentioned yesterday, and you mentioned again here, illegal immigrants who are getting child tax credits. Are you looking for that information in the IRS data?
Anytime a crime is committed, of course there should be an investigation. Is it your position that if somebody who is
Stephen, are you looking for that information in the IRS data?
The federal government will find every illegal alien who is stealing American taxpayer dollars. And that is what Americans expect to happen. I don't even fathom the premise of your question.
It's a simple question. Will you find that information in the IRS data and share that with law enforcement?
If IRS investigators find illegal aliens stealing taxpayer money, of course they'll be referred to ICE. Of course they'll be referred to Homeland Security investigations. Of course it will be. Surely your position is not that we should let illegal aliens steal taxpayer dollars. Again, you want to talk about something to be upset about, that's it. What do you think? The millions of illegal aliens who've also stolen Social Security. Illegal aliens in mass have fake Social Security numbers. They have fake identities. Those are felonies. Why should there be an entire class in this country that is immunized from criminal prosecution and arrest for committing felonies? Felony theft of taxpayer information, felony theft of Social Security, felony theft of identity. These are all crimes. And yes, they will be investigated. Yes, they will be prosecuted. And yes, illegal aliens will be deported. And you know what happens when those deportations occur?
Just very quickly,
is that Americans will get jobs, Americans will get benefits, Americans will get houses.
Stephen, if they got a credit, a child tax credit, and they will be referred, you're saying, to ICE for that, and you would expect deported.
They're not being referred to ICE for the tax credit. They're being referred to ICE because they're not here legally.
For that, is that the position of the administration?
Idiots.
If it is found that a crime has been committed, they'll be referred. If it justifies a prosecution, they'll be prosecuted. If it justifies a deportation, they will be deported. This will be based on existing IRS protocols and procedures for criminal investigation and fraud.
All right.
The difference is that no one is given immunity anymore. No one is given permission to break the law anymore. Because this is not a country, this is not a sovereign territory. If illegal aliens can freely steal billions, with a B, billions of taxpayer dollars. And I would have to imagine that CNN, which is endlessly talks about the importance of democracy and the rule of law, would say that no class in this country should be above the law.
Amen.
Least of all illegal aliens who've trespassed on our territory.
No, Stephen, I'm just asking. I wanted to get your position on some things. We're not taking a position here. We wanted to get some answers.
Oh, we're totally above board here. We're totally independent. We're not taking any sort of position we're referred to as a crisis or a mistake. Idiots.
Answers to some questions. There are so many questions that need to be
answered.
It doesn't
sound to me like you are, in fact, indifferent or unbiased on these questions, but thank you.
Stephen Miller, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed that interview. Hope you did too. Hope you did too. Before I get into the New York City losing its congestion pricing, which saves yours truly lots of money, lots of money. That's money back in my pocket. I want to share with you, in case you haven't seen it, you know that Delta flight that rolled over. I don't know if you saw the video of how it happened, because when I saw that plane upside down, I was astonished, and I was like, how does that even happen? And you may have seen it. Many of you probably have seen this, but a few of you probably have not. So I want to share with you the video of how that plane ended up upside down. But you're like, how can that possibly happen? Some people on the left were claiming it's because Trump fired people from the FAA, which makes a lot of sense considering that this happened in Toronto. Idiots. Check this out. Check this out. This is horrifying.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, no, 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 no.
Unbelievable.
Tower, you're seeing this airplane just crash into three. Oh, my.
Everything, drop it. Come on. Don't take your hand off. Take that phone away. On the way.
This is a miracle. No one died.
Fuck. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Oh my fucking God. Yo, I was just on this fucking plane. Oh my God.
Wow.
Yo, I was just on this fucking plane. Holy fuck.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. Wow. You ever seen any? No one's ever seen that before. I mean, no one's ever seen anything like that before this happened. That's unbelievable. That's really unbelievable. All right. So I wanted to share that with you. Before I get into this story right here. Trump killing congestion pricing. You might be able to call this a mean tweet also. I don't know. It's aggressive. It's an aggressive tweet. Congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. Long live the king. Indeed. Amen. Long live the king. Wow, legal questions. How does he do this? How does he do this? We'll save that part for the end. We'll save that for the part at the end. Let's start with this report here.
In a letter from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy to New York's governor, they call this congestion pricing plan a slap in the face to working class Americans and suggest the tolling system that is in place here is backwards and unfair. They say the idea that there's no way to enter Midtown Manhattan by car that isn't affected by this tolls makes it unduly burdensome to small businesses and to lower income people who might still have to drive into the city and don't have a choice to not pay these tolls like you would find on any other highway system anywhere in the country. They say they are pulling authority for this system, effective essentially immediately. Now, you won't be surprised to hear there's been significant pushback from the MTA commissioner, from the comptroller of New York State, arguing that this congestion pricing plan, which has been under discussion for about as long as I could remember in New York City, has been through countless environmental reviews and other reviews, was signed off on by the Department of Transportation under the Biden administration, arguing that the Trump folks can't.
Current mayor of New York City is Mayor Eric Adams, who I was thinking about covering that there was an appearance in court today by Emil Bove, Assistant Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, went to New York, was admitted in New York. He was part of Trump's defense team in the criminal action in New York. So he came into New York to personally urge the courts to dismiss without prejudice the charges against Eric Adams, which I talked about that and debated that with Nate, the lawyer, who called it the most corrupt thing he's ever seen in his life. I vehemently disagreed with him on that. I still think he's dead wrong. If you're wondering which of us is correct, me or him, I'll just simply point out that Alan Dershowitz literally last night, someone shared with me a clip that I tweeted out today, literally said point by point everything I said as to the fact that this sort of deal, this quid pro quo thing, is practiced by every district attorney's office across the country. You offer something because you want something back. I want you to plead guilty, so I'll give you lower charges. That's a quid pro quo. Well, justice says that you should take them all the way. Go all the way. It's easier for us, and we don't have to worry about getting conviction. So but justice says to take them all the way. Why are you cutting him a deal for a lesser included offense? It's a quid pro quo deal. You do something for me, I'll do something for you. That's the way justice has worked in our country since we've had a country. And somehow that's the most corrupt thing that Nate the lawyer ever heard. All right, that's his take on it. But I didn't mean to get it. So Emil Bove came in because the U.S. district attorneys in the Southern District of New York refused to make the request on his behalf. I don't know why. I mean, I know what they claim. They claim that it's not fair. They don't like the fact that the quo in this particular scenario is helping Trump with his immigration agenda. But coming back to so that's what I just want to sort of throw that out at you here. Not sure what made me think of that right now, but the argument that Trump's making here with respect to shutting it down
can't just come in and change their mind. Sean Duffy addresses this in his.
Oh, I know what I was getting at. I was getting at the history of New York City mayors. So there was Eric Adams, is currently the mayor of New York for 8 years. Before that, they had Bill de Blasio, and for 12 years before that, they had Mayor Bloomberg. He said how the fight for congestion pricing has been going on for as long as he can remember. It literally goes back to Bloomberg days. Bloomberg wanted to implement congestion pricing. This is something New York has been fighting about for a very long time, and the elitists love congestion pricing, love it, because they don't care about the $9 and they want fewer people in New York. It's a very elitist perspective. But at the end of the day, it's really a tariff. Congestion pricing is a tariff that's designed to punish anyone. In general, a tariff is, I want to punish you for not being an American and force you to pay higher prices to do business here. You want to do business here? You're not from America. You're going to have to pay more money. That's every tariff that we have is basically we're punishing you for not being here in America. This congestion pricing is a tariff on anyone who doesn't live in Manhattan. You don't live in Manhattan. We want to punish you if you want to do business here. You want to come here and do business and come here for any reason, we're going to hit you with a tariff. A tariff against people who are not Americans is very different from a tariff on Americans. Being implemented by an American municipality. It's a tariff on Americans, many of whom are just working class folks who just want to go there and feed their family. It's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible thing. Kathy Hochul wanted to make a press conference on this. This was her announcing that she's late, or announcement for that she's late.
Update on timing. Good news for the television news desks who have been calling us asking to go at 4 o'clock. It appears we're going to go at 4 o'clock. So call your desk, call your producers. Where's Joe? Call Mark Patel. He got what he wanted. But for the rest of you,
this is running late.
Apologies. It's not going to be quite as close as we normally do. I appreciate your patience. We're about 19 minutes away. Okay? So at least you know what's going on. Thank you.
That was the question. Is she stuck in traffic?
Yeah.
Traffic.
Update on.
Is she stuck in traffic? Bill Spadilla, who is the would-be Republican candidate for the state for gubernatorial race in Jersey, weighed in on this.
Hey guys, Bill Spadia here. Just midway through a busy day of campaigning. We are going to fix New Jersey. I just want to congratulate and thank President Donald Trump and our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, for putting the kibosh on congestion pricing. Way to go, guys. Thank you. We knew that President Trump had all of our best interests in mind, and pushing back on Hochul and this ridiculous idea of further gouging the middle and working class. It's about time. Thank you, Secretary Duffy, and thank you, President Trump.
So that's Bill Spadia weighing in with his cheering for it. But it's not just Bill Spadia. Even crazy leftist, liberal, lunatic governor of my state, terrible human being. I wish nothing but terrible things should be visited upon him by God. I really don't like my governor, Phil Murphy, who's responsible for countless thousands of deaths of the elderly during our most recent national health scare with the executive orders he passed. So he wrote even, I want to thank President Trump and Secretary Duffy for their efforts to halt the current congestion pricing program in Manhattan's Central Business District. While I've consistently expressed openness to a form of congestion pricing that meaningfully protects the environment and does not unfairly burden hardworking New Jersey commuters because I'm a crazy leftist, liberal, lunatic jackass, the current program lines the MTA pockets at the expense of New Jerseyans, meaning I want other people to pay for it, not people from New Jersey. Although we have a difference of opinion with our colleagues in New York on congestion pricing, we really love them. We have always had a productive relationship with our neighbors across the Hudson. I look forward to continuing this spirit of partnership for the benefit of the entire tri-state area. Clown, jerk. But even he had to regrettably, much to his chagrin, express his gratitude to President Trump. And this was the letter. Can you guys see that? Let me make it a little bigger for you. Dear Governor Hochul, this is from Secretary Duffy. I'm writing to concern the Federal Highway Administration's approval of the Central Business District tolling program, which is a pilot project under the Value Pricing Pilot Program. The FHWA, put this here so you can hear me. Move around a bit here. Implements VPP on behalf of the Secretary of Transportation pursuant to delegation of authority. On November 21st, 2024, just a couple months ago, FHWA, and the year after the elections, and the New York State Department of Transportation executed an agreement approving your stupid congestion pricing. The VPP is an exception to the general rule prohibiting tolling on highways. Congress approved the VPP exception in 1991 as a pilot test to congestion reduction techniques. New York State is one of 15 states authorized to implement the program. Pursuant to the November 21 agreement, FHWA's approved NYS DOT, Department of Transportation, implementation of this pilot project. Under the pilot project and its project sponsors, Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority and the New York City Department of Transportation were authorized to implement the method of congestion pricing. So basically, the only reason you have this congestion pricing is because we gave you that approval. The federal government gave you that approval. They were authorized to implement a method of congestion pricing known as cordon pricing, under which certain vehicles are charged tolls upon entry into Manhattan south of and inclusive of 60th Street. The imposition of tolls under the pilot project by the New York State Department of Transportation and its product sponsors became operational on January 5th, 2025. Trump recently took office, in case you didn't hear about it, on January 20th. I was nominated by the president to be Secretary of Transportation, confirmed by the Senate on January 28th, and sworn in on January 29th. Upon assuming my responsibilities, Trump asked me to review the approval of your stupid little congestion pricing. In particular, The president expressed his concerns about the extent of the tolling was approved by the department. So he asked me, why was this approved for them to have congestion pricing? No, it was approved by the Department of the DOT on highways that had been constructed with funds under the Federal Aid Highway Program. And the significant burdens on the New York City residents, businesses, and area commuters, including those from New Jersey and Connecticut, who regularly use the highway network in the CBD tolling area. This is only page 1 of the letter, which obviously continues beyond this. I don't think that the Libs TikTok put up the rest of this, but the point that we're getting at here is they're withdrawing their approval, no longer giving that approval. Why? Because you might ask yourself, why would the federal government have authority to do this? Kathy Hochul, to be certain, thinks that he does not have the authority to do this. Governor Kathy Hochul from New York saying in her statement, public transit is the lifeblood of New York City and is critical to the economic future. As a New Yorker, like President Trump knows very well. So, since this first-in-the-nation program took effect last month, congestion has dropped dramatically and commuters are getting to work faster than ever. Not true. Not true. Congestion is still bad there. Broadway shows are selling out and foot traffic to local businesses is spiking, really. School buses are getting kids to class on time and yellow cab trips increased by 10%. Yeah. A lot of people have to. So basically, people are spending money on cabs instead of having to give money to the government. Transit ridership is up. Drivers are having a better experience, and support this program is growing every day. This is all crap. Support comes from Manhattan residents. Manhattan residents are good with it. No one else. We're a nation of law is not ruled by a king. The MTA, this is a reference to his statement here. Long live the king. That's what she said, not governed by the king. The MTA has initiated legal proceedings in the Southern District of New York to preserve this critical program. We'll see you in court. The question is whether or not President Trump has the authority to withdraw his approval of something. Why does he have to give approval? Why is it up to him when it seems like it's a local issue? Why would it be up to him? So there's a federal law which prohibits pricing on things that affect interstate commerce. So the idea is that any American should be able to travel for free from any part of this country to another part of this country. There has to be at least a way that it's feasible to travel from one part of this country to another. And the notion that Secretary Duffy came up with, Transportation Secretary Duffy, and Trump came up with is this violates that freedom. You cannot freely drive anywhere in this country now that this congestion pricing is in effect. What he essentially is saying, and I had questions about this, especially when I read this article here by Reason. So Reason, when they tried explaining it, I was still left a little confused until I thought through a little bit more beyond what this article says. It's gone again. On Wednesday, the Trump administration withdrew federal authorization for New York's short-lived congestion pricing program that toll drivers entering a cordon covering lower Manhattan. Basically, there's a boxed-off area south of 60th Street all the way down to lower Manhattan, which is the entire Midtown region, from practically one side of Manhattan to the other, which Manhattan is very narrow. The whole thing is like roughly 12 avenue blocks. An avenue block is basically like 3 blocks long. So across, it's like 36 blocks. Say roughly like 1.5 miles to 2 miles across Manhattan. So, and we'll go further here first. In a letter to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, the New York State Department of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said New York's congestion pricing cordon did not qualify for an exemption to the general federal prohibition on tolling interstates because it did not provide drivers a toll-free option and because its primary purpose was funding transit, not reducing congestion. You're trying to just bulk up money for your MTA. That's not a valid basis. The union, well, we need to tax people and get money from our MTA. That's ridiculous. In fact, Kathy Hochul stupidly kind of admitted it here. She says public transit is the life of New York City and critical to our economic future. That's not a valid basis for congestion pricing. Not that you're trying to bulk up money for your stupid MTA. That's not a valid basis. New York State's congestion pricing plan is a slap in the face to working class Americans and small business owners, Duffy told the New York Post, which first reported this letter. President Donald Trump gloated about the policy's demise on Truth Social. In her own statement, Hochul, who had issued her own shock suspension of congestion pricing in June 2024, only to revive the program shortly after November 2024 elections, promised to sue over cancellation. This is what this Machshefa did. This Machshefa, she's like, no, we're not having congestion pricing. And 10 minutes after she was elected, she's like, let's go congestion pricing. MTA, the state agency that runs the New York City subways and will receive the congestion toll revenue, has already sued the Trump administration. It thus continues the long, troubled clownish saga of congestion pricing implementation in New York. The court-in pricing program was first authorized by New York legislature back in 2019, with the twin goals of raising money for New York City area rail transit and reducing traffic in the badly congested areas of Lower Manhattan. The initial plan was to begin charging drivers in 2021, but the program's implementation was delayed by numerous practical and political hurdles. Because New York would be tolling federally funded interstates, the federal government would need to grant an exemption to the federal government's general ban on tolling. Let's read this again, because this is the legal argument. Because they're tolling federally funded interstates, the federal government would need to grant an exemption to the federal government's general ban on tolling interstates. This confused the devil out of me. Let's pull up a map of New York. Let's confuse the hell out. If you look at this map of New York, this part over here is Manhattan. This part right here. This whole area is considered part of New York City. All is considered New York City. New York City is comprised of 5 boroughs. Yeah, Manhattan over here. This over here is New Jersey. Okay? This is the Hudson. There are 3 crossings that go across the Hudson. Up north, you have the George Washington Bridge over here. This is the Lincoln Tunnel over here in the middle, and then you have the Holland Tunnel down here. If you look at interstate as some interstate map, you really can't. You can't really. I'm trying to figure out where you're going to be. In the coordination, basically starts over here. Let's zoom in a little more. If we zoom in now, this. And we look at this. So again, this over here is the George Washington Bridge. This is the Lincoln Tunnel. This is the Holland Tunnel. This over here is New Jersey. This is the Hudson. This is the East River over here. So you have highways that are considered interstate highways that are coming along the edge here. This I don't think is an interstate highway over here. I don't think it's considered. It could be. I'm not sure. This is called the West Side Highway. That's running this yellow line over here, which they have listed as being 9A, which is not really accurate. No one calls that 9A. They just call it the West Side Highway. My understanding is that you can drive on all of these interstates and you're not going to get hit with a congestion pricing toll if you're driving along here. And this is why I was very bothered by a claim that this is and this is what Trump is relying on, that this is affecting interstate travel on federally funded roads, interstate highways, because it starts. This is 57. This is 110th Street. This is 57th Street. In the center here, this is Central Park, which goes from. It's really 60th Street over here, and goes up to like 110th. This is Central Park is pretty massive center in the middle here, right over here. Make this a little bit more zoomed in. So if we zoom in over here, this is Central Park. It starts at 60th Street, which really that's right here, and goes down to, I think, like the Houston area over here. And this is where Midtown Manhattan is. This is when you think of New York City. This is where you have your Broadway area is up over here. This is where you have this is where your Grand Central Station and Penn Station and all the commuting coming in here is all coming basically into this Midtown region of Lower Manhattan. Manhattan goes all the way up over here. You can't really tell because the highways are blocking it. It sort of ends here. This is the Bronx over here. There's sort of indents around the Bronx. There's water in between these. You can't tell because there's a highway that runs along the west side of the Bronx and another highway that runs parallel on the east side of Manhattan. So this is called the FDR Drive over here. So when you're looking at this map, I was like, where is this affecting? It doesn't go all the way to the highways. It doesn't. It starts like, because this is 12th. This is like with the equivalent to 12th Avenue. Not that there is a 12th Avenue really. And this runs along like First Avenue. If you're just staying on a highway, the congestion pricing isn't affecting you. It clicks on you, I'm pretty sure, when you get just one block in from there. So from like 57, in this square here, this relative rectangle here, is where the cordon pricing is. And I don't think it covers you when you're on the highway. So I don't think it's hitting you if you're driving on the highway. It's only hitting you when you get off the highway. That's my understanding. I could be mistaken, but that was my understanding. And that's why I was like, how is this affecting interstate travel? I don't understand it. I don't get it. Unless you're saying that through interstate travel, you need to be able to get to basically anywhere in the country without getting hit by a toll. And the reason I mentioned these tolls, or these bridges over here, these are all tolls. These all have like, I don't even know, $13, $15 tolls, $16. I don't know, because Easy Pass covers it for me, and I don't really look at that. So you can't get from New Jersey. It's impossible to get from New Jersey to Manhattan without paying some toll. You're going to have to pay a toll. Now, these crossings over here that you see on this map, this is the 59th Street Bridge. Sorry, that's not it. This is the 59th Street Bridge. This is free. You could get through here for free. This over here is the Midtown Tunnel. You have to pay for this. But you can actually go from Manhattan to Queens for free if you're so inclined. It's a little bit less convenient because it's just not a great, it's not, you have to sort of screw around to get onto a highway once you come over the 59th Street Bridge. But you can go for free. There are crossings for free that cover between Manhattan and the Bronx. There are free crossings that go from Brooklyn into Lower Manhattan. This down over here, this section down over here is Brooklyn. This part here is Queens. So this sort of the dividing line between Brooklyn and Queens is along here. So you can come over the Williamsburg Bridge, you can come over the Brooklyn Bridge, you come over the Manhattan Bridge, all that is free. You go through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, you have to pay. My point in this is I always wondered why it was that there's some free crossings and some paid crossings. What I heard many decades ago was that all of these tunnels and bridges that we have to pay for when we're crossing over were initially set up as, well, we have to build the bridge and it's going to cost money, so we'll charge a toll to go over it. And once we collect all that money, we'll stop charging that money. Ha, 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 ha. Since they long recouped those funds many, many decades ago, probably before I was even born, and the prices have only jacked up and jacked up and jacked up and jacked up. When I was a kid crossing these things, when I first learned to drive, like crossing these things was like $2, $2.50. And now it's like $13. So that's all government lies. But I always wondered why they don't bother charging for this. And I think it has to do with the fact that federally you have to be able to provide some way of getting in there by car where there's not any sort of toll for it. But that leaves me honestly with a question, which is there's no way to cross from New Jersey into Manhattan without paying some toll. You got to pay it somewhere. So I don't know what they're talking about here. I don't know. And I don't understand the logic behind the claim here that Trump is asserting that this is affecting interstate travel in a way that violates the ban on tolling interstate travel. I don't understand it. So, and that's why unless the only answer I have is that the only answer I have to that potentially, what did I do with that? The only possible answer I have is that I guess in theory, it's possible you can make a claim. Someone could say, a point someone can make is that you can't drive into that cordoned off section. I can't drive into Midtown Manhattan without paying some toll. And that maybe that's that's the problem. That I have to be able to get off the highway and go in somewhere without having to pay some sort of toll. And that's likely the answer to the question. That even though when you're on the road, you don't have to pay anything, but it's got to be more than that. That the ban on tolling is I have to be able to drive up to anyone's house or apartment without paying a toll if I'm interested enough in going that way. And there's no way to get to Midtown Manhattan in your car without paying this congestion fee. If I want to drive to Broadway and I want to avoid tolls, in theory, I could circumvent all tolls, although I still don't know how to do it from New Jersey. I'm living here my whole life, 50 years, and I have no idea how I would get from here into New York without paying a toll. I don't see how it's even possible. But maybe if I went all the way up north and then came down on the spring, I guess possibly if I want to drive 40 miles, if I want to drive 35 miles north and then 35 miles south, I think I might be able to get around that toll. If I went up into upstate New York and then came back down on the spring, maybe. I'm just trying to figure out how it would be done if someone were that inclined. Possibly. Anyway, bottom line is that's his justification, that you needed this approval, and he's saying we have the right to retract this approval. And frankly, I'm very torn. Because I hate this congestion pricing. I think it's evil, it's violence, and unfair tariff on people for not living in Manhattan. And at the same time, I don't really like the idea that the federal government is having this input on such a local issue. And I feel like it's ticky-tacky. So I kind of like the fact that I like the direction that the power is being asserted. I just don't like this level of power, if that makes any sense to you. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think many of you understand what I'm saying. I don't like this power. I don't want presidents to be wielding this kind of power, but I do like the result because I think congestion pricing is kind of vile and evil. First question, why was he filming? I was wondering the same thing with that plane thing rolling over. Why would you? Maybe he just felt it was cool to see a plane coming in so close to his car. Watch stupid news, win stupid lies. Nate is stupid and Danny is hot. All right. Not Lita, does this mean we stop digging tunnels? No, dig away. Dig. Today the tolls subsidize the subways. Yeah, well, that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not what this was supposed to be about. Feds have repeatedly and here's the thing, she's like, we want everyone to be taking the subway. Maybe clean out the crazy people there so you don't have to be like risking your life when you get on a subway and people will go back to the subway, bitch. You make it like you need hazard pay for getting on a freaking subway, and then you make it impossible to go into New York without paying for your car. It's like we're going to screw you this way or screw you that way. I used to have no problem at all taking the subway, and now I'm jittery every time I walk down those platforms. They turn it into, it's like we don't have an insane asylum. We just have NTA. It's ridiculous. Feds have repeatedly threatened to pull highway funding to achieve policy ends, state and local levels. That's true. And I've talked about it many times. That's true. They have. But this is not threatening to with pull money. This is a matter of saying, we gave you approval, now we're retracting that approval. Because in order to ignore this law, you have to get approval from the federal government. I think Trump might lose this one. I think he might lose it. I'm not going to kid you. I mean, like I said, I like the result of what Trump is doing. I'm really not crazy about the way he's doing it. And but you know who else is really, really happy about this? The rest of New York City. People who live in Brooklyn, people who live in Queens, they're really happy about it. Really happy about it.
An elitist tax that kept people from the outer.
This is Nancy Malliotakis. No, sorry, Nicole Malliotakis, who's part of the New York City Assembly.
Boroughs out of his district, and that's exactly what it is. It hurt the outer boroughs, people like the ones I represent in Staten Island and Southern Brooklyn, who are now forced to pay a toll to enter the city center and the city in which they live. And that was wrong. And it was a real burden for commuters who worked very odd hours, if they were a restaurant worker, if they're a nurse, if they're a first responder, if they have to go in for a doctor's appointment.
Oh, sorry.
This was a regressive tax that hurt my constituents, that hurt small businesses, that hurt the city's economy. And President Trump recognized that as a New Yorker. And that's why I'm very thankful that we have him in the White House, because he had told me from the very beginning that he would make this a priority upon being sworn in, and he kept his word. I've been fighting this tax going back to my days in the state legislature. I voted against it. I rallied against it. But it wasn't until we had a partner like President Trump in the White House who saw how destructive and damaging this toll was that he agreed in May when we first spoke about it, and in the days since, that he would use his authority to reverse it, and he has the authority to reverse it. Remember, this was created by the state, but it had to be approved by the federal government. So Joe Biden's Federal Highway Administration rubber stamped this, and they did so without requiring a full and thorough environmental impact statement under the National Environmental Policy Act, under federal law. And that's why we sued in court. We sued to stop this from taking effect because it violated federal law by not doing the studies that were necessary for a first-in-the-nation program. So this has significance not just for New York, but for the entire nation, because And
that's why this does have national significance, because this will start to kick in other cities like Los Angeles and Chicago, and other places will start implementing it if it works here in New York.
Democrat-run cities across the country were also looking to implement this cash grab as a get-rich-quick scheme for, in this case, the MTA. But really what the governor should be focused on is fixing the mismanagement at the MTA, number one. The projects there for a long time have been over budget, over schedule, overrun, and there's no answers as to why they cost billions of dollars more than what they're originally budgeted for and take years to complete, longer than they're supposed to be. That's number one. And the second thing the governor should do is make the city transit system safe so people feel comfortable riding it. A lot of people opt to drive into Manhattan because they don't feel safe, because people are being shot, they're being stabbed, they're being pushed in front of trains, and they're being set on fire. And that's ridiculous. And the governor needs to do more to make our city's transit system safe and reliable.
There you go. Well said, Nicole. Well said indeed. Just returning to the end of that Reason article here. Before the federal government could admit New York to the program, the National Environment Policy required it to produce an environmental study, New York Congestion Pricing Program. And this one I'm not sure about what Nicole is talking about here, because a NEPA review is no small order. It involved the federal highway officials producing a near 1,000-page report and collecting 28,000 pages of public comments. It wasn't until June 2023 the federal government finalized its environmental findings. The finalized report merely kicked off endless rounds of litigation from congestion pricing critics. New Jersey, teachers' unions, and more all sued the federal government for allegedly failing to do a thorough enough environmental analysis of the project. Nevertheless, New York battled ahead of it with the implementation. It installed tolling cameras and formulated actual toll rates, which were initially going to be $15 for the average driver. Then in June 2024, as they were about to be rolled out, Hochul realized it would destroy her campaign, and she made the shocking move of suspending the final implementation and congestion pricing, waiting until after elections before she screwed over everyone. The program has been first approved when crime was at record low, blah, 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 whatever. I want to see. I saw preliminary data of the first month of congestion pricing bore out those predictions. A congestion tracker supervised by Brown University professor Emily Oster found that in the first month of congestion pricing in Manhattan, congestion on bridges and tunnels leading to Manhattan is down, but congestion within the price cordon has remained the same. It's the same congestion in Midtown Manhattan. Quote, it's having an impact on travel behavior outside the zone, but it doesn't appear to have a measurable impact within the zone. That's a big problem, says Mark Scribner, a transportation researcher. What's the purpose of cordon pricing? It's to reduce congestion within the zone, the cordon off area. That's where you're supposed to be reducing congestion, and you're still having congestion there. So no, it's not doing what your objective was. Scribner says that the apparent minimal impact on traffic is a product of the Manhattan tolls being primarily used as a funding tool for New York mass transit. The tolls were therefore set to maximize revenue and reduce political pushback, not minimize congestion. The Trump administration therefore has a point when it says that New York's congestion pricing scheme doesn't align with the purpose of the VPP. Nevertheless, Scribner says that Trump administration's cancellation of New York congestion tolls is an example of the outsized powers of federal officials have over non-federal transportation policy. Quote, this suggests that the federal government has too much authority of states and localities to toll their own infrastructure and implement road pricing. That's really something that Congress should address. I happen to agree with him on that. Don't like strong federal government. We're not going to have President Trump forever. I don't want the next woke person to be able to impact things locally. So I happen to agree with him on that. Anyway, we are at the 3:17 mark. I have fulfilled my promise and kept my pledge to y'all to be here for 3 hours. That's pretty much what my show is. We did it. You and me, kid. We got it done. Doing a quick glance around, make sure I didn't miss anything here, because I did miss a few. So let's catch up on what's happening in the ghetto. In the ghetto, Spuds says congestion pricing is a pilot program per Transportation Equity Act 21st Century, aka TEA 21. There are caveats that allow for the tolling of federal funded road, like annual audits and options. He also says Hochul's corrupt and incompetent MTA has no case because it does not offer options as per those caveats. This is simply a cash grab for an illegal operation per TEA 21. Thank you. Don Mannion says, starting Friday, 9 p.m. Central, Mofo No-Show Joe show. Mofo No-Show Joe show. Wow. It's on Rumble at 9 p.m. Pacific. Sorry, 9 p.m. Central is the... Sorry. Let me get this. Let me clarify, because I was saying it wrong. Now, I'll bring it up here. Let me bring this up. I'm afraid if I pop this out. Yeah, okay. Well, I should be able to keep it. There we go. because I'm not going to read this right. Starting Friday, 9 p.m. Central, the Mofo No Show Joe Show. Then 9 p.m. Pacific. Why wouldn't you just say 11 p.m. Central? It's like you're screwing around with time zones. 9 p.m. Pacific, chat-splaining. I don't even know what chat-splaining means, but yes, if you're around on Friday and you're looking for something to do, you got the Mofo No Show Joe Show. and then at 9 p.m. Pacific, you have chat-splaining. Why? This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. 9 p.m. Central and then 9 p.m. Pacific. You're an idiot. All right. What else did I miss? Joe, you now have to pay across all bridges below 60th Street, 59th Street, Williamsburg, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Lincoln. It designated interstates and got fed. Really? Since when is that? Joe Manor's Bridge in New York City roads like Thruway were built before the Interstate Highway Act existing can be told as they were previously. They didn't get federal funding as touring roads. Well, that explains it. These projects funded Fed State 80-20. The feds can yank their funding since it does not comply with T21 since these roads were not initially built on a tolling structure. Ah. I got 2 of these from him. He wanted to make sure that he got that Mofo No Show Joe Show thing. Mofo No Show Joe Show. So there you go. And 9 p.m. Mountain Time, we got to figure out what's going on. That makes sense. That explains a lot, Duck Bat. That explains a lot. All right. All right. Feds are repeatedly threatened to pull highway funding to cheap. Oh, we got that one. Frankie Lowe coming in with the final chat of the night, saying it was the secretary of the Department of Transportation that pulled the approval of New York's congestion pricing. This action, in essence, was like Congress withdrawing approval because the US DOT is a federal agency. You're saying that they have the authority to do it. I guess. I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of legal ticky-tackiness that I'm unfamiliar with here. Can you grant approval and then yank it? Could they yank it 6 months from now? Could they yank it 20 years from now? Is it like how long? Why would you be allowed to yank your approval? I don't know where you come to that you have the power once you grant the approval to withdraw it. But he's questioning everything that the lame duck Biden administration did, and I that kind of perspective I kind of like, because most of what he did was inherently corrupt. That's my show, and I'm sticking to it. Joey's feeling tired. 3-hour shows are tiring. So, God willing, tomorrow I'm hoping to have the older millennial on. I'm not sure if I will. We'll see. While you're here, please like, share, subscribe. Drop a comment down below if you think that Putin is really not that much worse than Zelensky, or you think that he's much worse. I don't care. You might disagree with me. A lot of people will agree with me on many issues and disagree on one or two, and that's totally fine, and I respect that. I just urge you to everyone should question their perspectives on things, even if I say it. I want you all to question and think for yourselves. So with that, I'm going to tell you, lab meat is for they, them. It's definitely not for you. I know this. I've looked into it. It's definitely not for you. It's for they, them. You don't want it. Do not eat the bugs. Don't do it. Don't eat the bugs. And on that note, that note, I say to you all, good night and Godspeed.